2, 1.
Good evening and welcome to the Select Board meeting for August 15th. We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Are there any announcements tonight? Stephen?
I guess announcements or town manager's report. There's some information that should be put on our website. Should be on there now if it's not, about West Nile virus and the Board of Health's position on the threat and what steps people should take. So make sure you check out that information. Really, the big thing is if you're doing outdoor activities at dusk, make sure you take precautions. Use bug spray, things like that. Wear long sleeves if the temperature allows. And then the other information I'm putting is about bats. If you get a bat in your house, it's important to try and stun the bat or try and find a way to capture the bat, and then ask Board of Health Director Beverly Hirschhorn to come get it from you so you can send it to a state lab at the town's cost to Boston to get tested for rabies. Especially if you have infants and toddlers who can't communicate whether or not they've been sleeping and have been contacted by the bat. If there's any doubt, it's important to get tested. And sometimes people open the window to let the bat fly out or take it and throw it in the trash, or a contractor they'll call somebody to come get the bat and they'll take it away. And then if there's ambiguity, you could face the potential of having a very expensive and painful rabies shot. So it's really important to make sure that you handle that situation appropriately. According to the information, the old tennis racket approach is the way to go. And if you don't know what that is, I guess it's probably on YouTube, but basically let the bat fly around in a circle and then hold the racket up. And I saw my dad do it once. But it's a serious issue, and so make sure if you have a bat in your house, you take the proper steps to avoid uncertainty about rabies. So those are the two kind of PSAs.
Okay. All right. Any resident comments? No? Select Board comments? No.
Yes, I have one here. I found this article, and seeing how volunteers are such an important part of our town government, I thought I'd share this because it's a study from the Family Medicine Psychiatry News online journal. And it says volunteering among middle-aged elderly patients is linked to mental well-being. And they did a meta-analysis, so they looked at all these different studies that looked at well-being and the aging process, and they found that basically there's a positive relationship between volunteering and health outcomes such as mental health, well-being, self-rated health, cardiovascular disease, risk factors for cardiovascular disease, disability, and life satisfaction. And I've seen other studies that say that volunteering at least 1 hour a week will keep you from getting sick, that support this study. So again, I only shared this because we have so many volunteers who do help us out, and so it's a win-win. It's also good for you. That's it.
Any other announcements, Mark?
Yeah, I just want to note that for the record, and Marie, I know you and I have talked about this for some time. We have a special select board meeting scheduled this Thursday at 11:30 a.m. And just for the record, I'm concerned that a couple of us aren't going to be able to be there. I think the meeting schedule was not in the best of effort to try to schedule it so the select board could all be there and vote. Don't need to pursue it any longer. We've talked about it offline here, but I did want to express my displeasure with the meeting being scheduled at Thursday at 11:30 a.m. at a time when several of us can't, or a couple of us can't be there.
Okay. Any other Select Board comments?
I did have one more announcement that I forgot.
Okay.
On the piece of paper. The 2016 Regional Hazardous Waste Day is Saturday, September 17th from 9 to 1, and that is the Minnetonka Regional High School, 621 Main Street in Wilbraham. There's information about this also on our website, what you can bring, what you can't, but if you have hazardous materials like oil-based paints and things like that, or old paint thinner, things that you can't really put in the trash and don't know what to do with, that we can't take at our recycling center. This is the one time a year that you can dispose of it. Sorry.
And I'm just going to add an announcement off of what Tom's talking about. We will be interviewing beginning of September again for our openings in our boards and committees. So for your own well-being, as well as for the town, we'd appreciate if you would look up, see what's available, and sign up. Thank you. All right, now we have to wait until, is it 7:10?
7:10, yeah.
Okay, so why don't we move along to you want to start the manager reports?
Sure. And if you want to make an announcement about Tom's recent news.
Oh, yes. I can't believe I forgot that.
I can't believe you forgot it. To be honest with you, I can't believe you forgot it.
We have a celebrity on board here. Tom Lacuccia has been named to the National Wrestlers Hall of
Well,
Fame.
Not quite that big, no, it's this tiny little Hall of Fame in Rochester, New York.
Yeah.
But they looked at my whole, between high school and college, and then I was a referee, and I coached, and I did youth, and I think what pushed me over the top was the last 2 years I was the president of the booster club for the wrestling team at the high school. And I think that once they heard that, they said, put him in. So, I
And
go
your
on
ears
Sunday.
look fine.
Huh?
Your ears look fine.
Yeah, I never heard anyone else's ears either. I'll have you know. But no, I think those are the guys who get beat up.
Yeah.
Sorry,
The winners don't.
you know, I never let anyone touch my ears.
So you'd be enshrined between like Hulk Hogan and Andre the Giant, right?
Yeah, those guys were
Yeah.
chumps. No. Yeah, I did get to see Andre wrestle once. The guy is huge. It was unbelievable how big that guy was.
So not only is your skill, but all the volunteer that you've done in coaching and with youth is being honored now, so
Yeah.
congratulations.
Oh, thanks. It's fun when you see someone reach a goal that they set for themselves. You know.
And we see you've been doing it here in Long Meadow, too, with your
Yeah.
announcements and what you've been involved with the youth wrestling, so thank you very much.
Well, thank you. Thank you. I think one of my biggest recent accounts is we had 10 kids join the team this year. 10 new kids. I mean, that's a big jump to go from 15 to 25. It's a big jump. So that's what programs. Whereas the town next to us, East Long Meadow, they only had about 7 or 8 kids on the team. So
Wow.
things are going right here.
That shows how much 25 means. That's
Oh,
a
yeah,
huge
yeah.
thing. That's great. Congratulations.
Thank you. Thank you for your interest.
Marie, can we just act on approve the minutes of the last meeting?
Sure.
I'll move we approve the minutes of the August 1st, 2016 regular meeting select board.
Is there a second?
I'll second it. Yep.
Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. Yeah, we're down to 2 more minutes. Let's see. Well, why don't we go ahead, the other topics, just why don't we go ahead and start with you?
I can certainly introduce the town manager's report. One component that you can see in your packet is information about the traffic signal design at Converse in Dickinson Street as part of our Converse Street project, which is, as a side note, I want to note that we did complete the process of acquiring the temporary easements and issuing the payments and have a right-of-way plan signed off by Mass DOT, so we will meet our project bid date next week. And for the uninitiated, it's hard to describe what a major accomplishment that was for especially the Department of Public Works, but also our town council, who had very limited experience in dealing with those types of issues. So I want to commend the men and women of the department and our town council, as well as Mass DOT, for their continued patience in getting through a major bureaucratic and administrative process that we had never really been through before. Again, it's a major project, and I don't want to start now because we're so close, but Matt Chase, our engineer for the project, is here, and once the liquor license hearing is over, he can go through some of the information. Obviously, there's no memo for me just because I was on vacation for the past 2 weeks, so that's why my end of the report was a little light.
The rest of the report was great, though. It was really tremendous reports this month from the various departments.
Probably because I wasn't there.
Yeah. Are we not quite at 10 after? I'll just make a sort of my comment on the town manager report. I just wanted to say, if anyone does go and reads the packet, you really should read the policing in Long Meadow. It was a very moving piece that was written by the chief, describing what it means to police in Long Meadow, the difficulties as well as the joys, the support by the community, as well as some of the abuse that they receive. And he said now that things are occurring around the country, that Long Meadow Police have changed the way they're policing. They're a little more cautious, a little more hesitant when they go out. And it really is a moving piece. You should open up the packet that's available to everyone and read it. And the other thing I thought was very interesting, if you read the bottom of the Long Meadow Police Department's activities for July 2016, you can see compared to last year, they had 1,236 for the month contacts in 2015. Now they're up to 1,561. So it's a very active force, but a lot of people have gone by the Long Meadow Police Department to thank them for their service, to bring, during these difficult times where we're losing officers around the country, they've been bringing coffee, donuts, cookies, and just notes, and the police department said they really appreciate it. So I thought it was a very moving piece that the police chief wrote. I think we can safely say we're after 10 after, so I'm looking for a motion to open the hearing.
I move we open the liquor license violation hearing.
Is there a second?
Second.
All those in favor? All right, is there anyone here who wants to speak for Lee Brothers or for a witness on it? Are you? Please come up.
Sure.
And I'll read the notice of the hearing.
Police officer, too.
Oh, you're here also? Okay. I just need to swear both of you in, but first let me read the notice of the hearing. The Long Meadow Select Board will hold a hearing at the Long Meadow High School Meeting Room, A15, at Bliss Road, Long Meadow, pursuant to MGL Chapter 138, Section 64, on August 15, 2016, at 7:10, to consider modification, suspension, revocation, or cancellation of an alcoholic beverage license issued to Lee's Brothers Inn. The basis for this hearing is the allegation that on July 27, 2016, at approximately 5:30 p.m., alcohol was sold to a person under the age of 21 in violation of Mass General Law, Chapter 138, Section 34. You have the right to attend the hearing, to offer evidence on your behalf, for counsel to be present, and to call witnesses. So I'd like to swear in the witnesses for today's hearing. Please raise your right hand. Do you swear to tell the truth, the whole truth, nothing but the truth?
I do.
Okay, thank you. All right, why don't we begin with the police officer testifying to the incident and your statement.
Good evening. My name is Matt Chaplin. I've been a police officer in the town of Long Meadow for about 9 years now. And on July 27, 2016, from 5:30 p.m. to 6:25 p.m., I conducted compliance checks of establishments licensed by the town of Long Meadow to sell alcoholic beverages for consumption on premises, as well as those licensed to sell alcoholic beverages off premises. Our undercover operative, a 20-year-old female who volunteered to assist the LPD with alcohol compliance checks, was wearing a black and white striped dress. A photograph was taken, her breath tested for the presence of alcohol, and the parameters of the operation were explained. She did not have pockets, and her small purse only contained a cell phone and a $10 bill, recorded and photographed, in order to complete transactions. She signed and stated that she understood the compliance checks guidelines. We used the compliance check guidelines set forth by the Alcohol Beverage Control Commission. The volunteer and I drove in an unmarked green Ford Taurus police vehicle. At 5:32 p.m., we started and arrived at our first location, the bottle shop. At each establishment, I would park so we could clearly watch the volunteer enter and exit the establishment. Only the volunteer would enter the establishments unless she was served an alcoholic beverage. 8 establishments passed the compliance checks. The one establishment that failed and served alcohol to the underage volunteer was Lee Brothers. And I was parked at 5:46 p.m. I was parked in the parking lot of Lee Brothers. I observed our volunteer enter Lee Brothers. Our volunteer sent a text message to me saying that she was served alcohol. I entered and observed our volunteer sitting in the first seat at the bar to the left as you enter the restaurant. I clearly saw a full glass of draft beer sitting in front of her on a table. The volunteer left, and I asked to speak with the manager, Miss Lee, who was behind the register, stated that she was the manager, and she turned to the server, Miss Ron, and asked if she had asked for identification, pointing to the bar where the draft beer was located. Ron shook her head no, and Lee stated that she had nothing else to say other than she was sorry. Later, back at the station, the volunteer stated that she had asked for a Bud Light, and within 30 seconds, the female server returned with a full glass of Bud Light. And the volunteer's information can be found in the file folder.
Okay, and your name?
Oh, my name is Lee, Lee.
Could you spell that?
Or you can spell for, you can say Gina, Gina is easy.
Okay.
Gina, yeah.
Ching Lee?
Yeah, Chini, yeah.
Okay, do you need more spelling for that, Debbie?
No.
That's fine.
Okay.
Okay, do you agree and stipulate to the facts that were just read?
Yeah, so he right, so, but I will be say sorry about it, but he had a tip license too, forever the girl serving the wine for the other girl, she have tip license too. Every day I tell them I have to try it. Every day I tell them you have to must check the customer ID before you're serving. And she had a tip ID too. So tip license, she went to the computer, she had a tip license too. And after that, because she cannot speak much English, I asked her what's going on. She said, I think she's 21. I said, don't think about 21. So I don't know how can I say, but I think we all make a mistake. So we make a mistake. I hope can, so get a little bit, I don't know, say, little punishment. So for us, so she was nice, but she said she's thinking about it. I said, don't think about it. It made me trouble now. So she feels so bad, but nothing can to do. So, and then one more thing, a question. So I heard in the other state. So she worked in the other state too before, and she said some like I think remember it's she said Ohio or something. It's forever who make a mistake. So who need a meeting? No, like an owner or manager. And in the future, they won't be making mistake. Yeah, that's I say why Massachusetts never changed this law. So could be happen. Not my restaurant. Last year, same thing happened too. The guy quit for right away. He quit the job right away. She bye bye. He bye bye as a man. He say bye bye. And then I say, so I think this point every people have to pay attention. Why if every people serving the wife under 21 years old, this person had to went to the meeting or have to give this person for something. Like Ohio, I heard $1,000 for only she had to pay. So she future forever she will be remembered she make a mistake.
Yeah.
So I come here, she could be nothing feeling. She the moment she feels so bad for me. Right now she okay.
Yeah. Unfortunately, what our laws, our bylaws are, it does fall on the owner.
Yeah,
rather
I
than the
know.
server.
So I will be. I apologize this point. Yeah. So I'm agree that I needed. You can do something. So from yeah.
I'll see if anyone has any questions for Ms. Lee. No?
The only question I would have is that this is the second violation in.
Yeah, last year, this year, second time.
According to the violation policy, are we required? I mean, it's pretty clear what the policy is. Are we required to follow those guidelines?
This is just policy guidelines. We can divert policy.
Yeah.
Okay. So no other questions, and no one else is here to testify in the case? Okay. And did you want to add anything else?
I could just say that unfortunately it's the second failed within 7 months, and there's 3 within 7 years. There's one back in 2009 as well. So, and they're the only place last month that failed out of all the places, so.
Thank you. All right, do I have a motion to close the hearing?
I'll move we close the hearing.
Is there a second? Any discussion? All those in favor? Okay, so now we will decide, we'll make a decision, we're going to deliberate.
No
Okay?
problem.
So you can stay, but we're going to be talking among ourselves. Does
Okay.
anyone have an opinion on where they want to go with this?
Yeah, I think our guidelines are quite straightforward. Not, you know, in fact, because it's the second failure in 7 months, I'd recommend that we move at the top of our guideline, which is a 6-day suspension of the license. And in fact, I'm going to make a motion that we suspend the license of Lee Brothers liquor license from August 18th through August 24th.
Is there a second?
I would, one thing that I would say, I've been thinking a lot about this, is that on the one hand, I mean, I hate to hurt small businesses, but we also don't want to waste the police force's time. You know, they're out there doing their job, and this is the second time, so I do also believe that it should be suspended.
I'll second the motion.
Okay, so further discussion on, so I'm reading the violations policy. It says second is 2 to 5, 3 is 6 to 29. So you're looking at this being the third.
Well, it's certainly the third in a short period of time, as Officer Chapman said, but also it's two consecutive compliance violations in the past. You know, there's always been some gap in between, so yes.
And the one thing our policy doesn't say is how long the period of time that we're looking back at. Which I know we've discussed that in the past.
State regs cost is a 1-year period. They do a reset in 1 year. They
Oh, they do.
They can do a reset in 1 year.
So we'd really be at 2, not 3.
Yeah. But as I say, this is a policy. That's all it is, policy. It's not a
Oh, I see.
bylaw.
So we'll be going above the policy here.
That sounds like what Mark was proposing, is one notch above the policy. Officer, when was the third violation? I didn't write that down.
Let's see.
Or
The
the
oldest
first
violation?
violation,
The
yeah.
first one? October 2009.
2009. Has there been an ownership change since 2009?
Yeah, same thing for just add the family change family. Like my mom changed me, my brother changed me. We add the person out of us. Would be the same.
And when did you take it over?
I take it over for a few months ago.
A few months ago?
For whole thing, I take it.
Oh, okay.
Now it's 100%.
Okay. Well, you know, the thing that always bothers me, this is such a simple thing to comply with. If they look under 40, you ID them. I mean, we've talked about that before at this board. I think I mentioned Wegmans, the National Food Store. They card every single person that buys alcoholic beverages at their store. Regardless, you can be a grandmother, me, with my white hair, they card me. It's their policy. And I keep wondering why we have anybody in this community that wouldn't understand the position of the select board, which seems to be getting more rigid on our enforcement of the alcohol laws, and not start carding everyone. I mean, it's common, to me, it's common sense, and that's why I don't understand it. It's not an insult to people to be carded. They understand why if they're paying attention, they understand the teen drinking and the alcohol-related deaths and the epidemic health concerns and all of the drinking. There's no problem. We've had people insinuate that maybe it's an insult or it slows up their business. Well, so be it. Death from alcohol-related deaths also slows up a lot of things. So I fail to understand, Ray, why. And we got a lot of business doing great. I mean, the officers checking, we had everyone except one.
Yes, that's true.
So there is a lot of good work. It's just these occasional hiccups. But this is a zero phase, not phase.
Dollars?
No, you can't fail in this. It's a zero fail. Because if that person could have consumed alcohol, went out and had a fatal accident. It's a sensitivity, and you as the owner and the manager, you have to instill the sensitivity on your staff, and it's not an option. And we cannot honestly sit here and brush these aside and act like, well, it was just a bad night for the person. We can't do it. It doesn't bring about change.
And then just to follow up on Richard's point, is that when a server serves them the first drink, well, then they can keep serving them. I mean, the police don't have them order several drinks, but you're right. I mean, there's no...
I
they
kind
could.
of understand.
Yeah.
For my personal, I totally understand. I ask every people, either I know the person, like you say, white hair going there, I ask for.
Yeah.
Doesn't matter how longer, So how old they are, I will be asked for for ID. That's I always do that myself. But she understand either. So
Yeah.
we don't know. So like last time, same thing. So they all understand. Sometimes I don't know how can I say for myself between So for myself, I ask every people. I ask every people. Doesn't matter how old they are. So I ask for every people
Yeah.
because I totally understand if a problem is mine, no data. So I tell them also. I tell them every day. Every day morning come or afternoon break time, I tell them.
Thank
So-
you. Mark?
Yeah, Marie, Debbie, thank you. Debbie pointed out to me that the liquor license holder must be given a minimum 5 days' notice of the action to allow time to file appeal. So my motion was actually out of order to begin this on the 18th. So I'd like to modify the motion to be the 23rd to 29th, which is the same period of time, but it's moved it up so that it complies with the state requirements. Richard, will you still second
Yeah,
that?
I'll second.
I guess my only concern is why you went from 2 up to 3, because our policy, it says you need to cause the violation was not completed tips. My understanding, the server had completed tips. So is it because you're going to the 7-year look back, Mark, that you went up to 3?
No, I think I'm going to the 7 months in between the 2 consecutive violations.
Okay, because it doesn't really say that in the policy, but it's just a personal preference.
Right, that's all.
Okay.
But I did have, another comment was that, 7 months ago, we did a check and we had 3 violations, right?
Yeah.
So people still aren't getting the message, we still had 1 violation. I mean, we should be doing these and have 0 violations. And I guess the other thing that concerns me, and I guess it would be difficult to test if they would serve a person who was obviously over the influence, if they'd continue to serve them. I mean, I don't know if police do those kinds of, officer, is there anyone who ever does that kind of a check?
You mean send someone in and buy a couple drinks and see how long until they'd stop serving? No,
Yeah,
we're strictly with the underage. I mean,
because that's the other concern.
that one's probably.
I'm not worried about underage.
Volunteer.
No, I don't.
You'd have a long list of
Do we have
volunteers.
any volunteers?
But, yeah, we can easily find someone at closing time, or before closing time, and say, but, yeah, so it's not a good sign.
Marie, the guidelines really don't get into the frequency of it. I think that's a personal judgment call that Mark has applied to this. I never like when we apply personal type stuff. I like to stay within the confines of the regulation. And Mark has proposed 6 days, so he has gone up to the minimum on the 3rd offense. I'd like to offer a motion for consideration that we drop it back to the 5 days. If we do go the max allowed with the second warning, but put it at a 5-day suspension.
I would second that.
How does that work? You're asking
I've
for
offered an
reconsideration?
amendment to the motion.
Oh, so you amend and you second it. Okay. Any discussion on the amendment?
And so would that go from the 23rd to the 28th? Or
No, it would just go, instead of 6-day suspension, it would be 5-day suspension.
Yeah, 23rd to 28th, Tom.
Oh,
yeah.
I see what you're saying, down
If we're
there.
going to do that, then we ought to do it the 24th to the 29th, in my opinion.
Okay. So, any further discussion on the amendment? All those in favor of the amendment? All those opposed? Okay. And a motion on the, we still have to have a motion on a vote on the original
Right, so
motion.
the motion has been amended on the time, so we're voting on whether to actually put the fine in place or not to.
Okay. All those in favor? Okay. Thank you very much for coming in.
Okay, thank
And we
you.
hope not to see you again.
Okay.
Thank you.
Officer, thank you for your work.
Thank you.
Thank you.
So Marie, just, Ms. Lee, just as a matter of course, generally what happens, it means on the 24th of August, your establishment needs to surrender your liquor license to the town hall on that day,
August 24th?
on August 24th.
So for all the, okay.
And you have the right to appeal it.
You will be going, send a letter for us? I'll send you a letter. Okay, so, thank you so much.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, so we'll go back to the town manager's report.
Sure, I'd ask Mario Mazza, the director, and Chase, the VHB, to come up to the table. You should have gotten 2 images in your packets if you want. Looks like you brought some paper copies that are larger. What do you want? And hand them out, or is the electronic version?
I'd like to,
Colored pictures.
I think I have 7. I think Andy took them today.
We should use up a pretty quick. Thank you. That Tom running? No, it's late. We did put it up the license plates too. That's good.
I want to make sure.
Oh, okay. So, one of the things I think I'd reported on before was the challenge of the traffic signal at Converse and Dickinson, which right now is what they call a span wire. It's got 2 columns, and then there's wires across, and the traffic signals are mounted on the wire itself. That's obviously a very old signal. Mass DOT will really only fund a mast arm, which is the single pole and the big bar going across with the lights fixed to the bar. They do not support span wires anymore. Is that right?
Well, they do in certain circumstances, but there's other reasons why the span wire doesn't work for this. I can elaborate on that if you want me to.
Right.
Or, yeah.
So one of the things is what should it look like, and we want to, now that we're going to be looking at our intersections along Long Meadow Street, we want to get, my goal anyway that I have conveyed to Matt is to have a consistent application of design. I think it should be black. It should look good. But the big thing is not to have 4 different kinds of traffic signals as we go through and start replacing the ones along Meadow Street. They should all kind of match and tie together. The one consideration is driving you can see the curvature of the arm. Matt can talk about this in greater detail, but I just want to point out, if you look at this one with it's sunrise or sunset, you can see the utility lines kind of coming through the picture where the mast arm is lower. And just bear that in mind as Matt discusses the reasons why this is the design that is being recommended. Because we have utility wire issues at that intersection that using the style of mast arm would save a significant amount of time and money versus a straight out mast arm, which we may use in other locations. So with that, I'll turn it over to Matt.
Thank you. So one of the things that we encountered at that intersection during design, and it's, take a step back, the project's going out to bid Saturday. So it was a project, as Stephen had mentioned earlier, that it was fast-tracked, had a really tight schedule, and meeting all the right-of-way deadlines and design deadlines. Were on the home stretch, so to speak, of getting this thing out to bid this weekend. And one of the things, we had a utility meeting, and looking at the current span wire that's out there today, the way it's the heads are positioned, the way it was designed back in the 90s, it wouldn't meet the current design. So we're making some minor revisions to the corner radii and things where the signal heads just wouldn't line up with the lanes. So we have to put in an alternative mast arm or span wire approach, and even a new span wire wouldn't work because of the new the locations of the span wire, the locations of the utilities. There's some low hanging wires that are owned by Comcast that would be in direct conflict with any situation that would come, I guess, perpendicular off of one of these mast arms today. And one of the things that we're doing that's causing different, changing the design over what's out there now is that the signal doesn't, the ramps, wheelchair ramps, crosswalks and things don't meet current standards for ADA. And so we're bringing those to current standards, which requires us to move the mast arm foundations back further, which then makes us having to go through or move utilities. And so we had a utility walk with DOT, and our two options were to relocate 2 or 3 utility poles and put poles to be, I think they're 45 feet now. They would go to a 60-foot wood pole and raise the utilities up so we could go underneath them. Or we have to look for an alternative that would go under this low-hanging wire and not be in conflict. We have to stay out of their, they have a certain zone of influence that we have to stay out of. So one of the things that we came up with was this, quote-unquote, I guess, ornamental type mast arm, which has this vertical post and kind of a arching mast arm before it straightens out over the roadway. And what this allows us to do is the point where it intersects and joins with the vertical pole is about 15 feet high, where the wire line would be about 18 feet of a conflict. So you can kind of tell from the picture, you can make the assumption if it's a straight across, it'd be right around that 18-foot mark if you move that point up 3 feet or so. So this allows us to go underneath that utility wire and then come out over the roadway more cleaner and less conflict. DOT typically doesn't fund for these types of mast arms, but they made an exception for this project. So one of the things we did was we came up with a couple pictures to move forward with this project and to keep it simple and to keep maintenance costs to a level that DPW can maintain in the future. What you're looking at here has a few other features that we wouldn't be pursuing. It has this one has a finial on the top. This would just be capped. And then these have like an ornamental clamshell base that gets clamped onto the bottom. And this wouldn't have that either. Those are two things you could add on at any time if you wanted to. A couple of these show a fluted type pole, but we're just going smooth type pole with no flutes, and it would be black. So this gives you kind of an example if you kind of took out the, that base and without the finial and the flute type style. This wanted to give you something that represents, closely of what we're doing.
Mario, our other poles in town, do we have any fluted?
No, we do not. Not that I'm aware
I was
of.
trying to think. I don't think I've seen
And I
fluted
think
either.
when we first discussed this project, Mass DOT obviously doesn't pay for this, but this was kind of the Cadillac of signals. And they were willing to. But Stephen had suggested, listen, we're never going to duplicate this again. There's no sense of doing it here. Let's, approach it with the smooth pole and smooth arm. So that way, if we do duplicate this in other parts of the town, it's something we can afford, and they'll all be similar.
Well, all of our existing lights that are on poles are smooth poles.
They are.
There's no fluted.
Best of my
I couldn't
knowledge.
recall if I'd seen any fluted poles.
And I walk by them often, but I'm pretty sure the decorative street lights along the green are not fluted either. I think those are smooth too.
Right. So there
I
basically
could be
is a
wrong about
standard
that,
of
but-
having non-fluted
Yeah,
poles.
a non-fluted pole.
Right.
And I find that, the more it blends in, the better it is. So rather than make a traffic signal stand out through ornamentalization, through making it more ornamental, I think it's better to just have something that looks good, but doesn't necessarily take away from we have a beautiful community. We don't need street poles to make it look nicer.
The only thing is the fluted pole fits deeper into history than the straight poles.
Right.
That's the only connection there's made, and we don't have an actual visual quality handbook or a green historic book that states that, so we can get by with the non-fluted.
But most of our main intersections are going to be replaced, between work on Converse Street and work on Long Meadow Street. I mean, we're going to be replacing a lot of the main lights. And so if we did switch to fluted, this would probably be the time to do it.
But it still wouldn't be 100%.
No,
And we would
it
have to
wouldn't
pay
be.
extra at each. We would have to pay extra at each intersection to do the fluted poles.
How much extra?
Yeah.
I mean,
Add
these are
that number?
30-year poles or 40-year poles or something.
Well, until they get knocked out.
Yeah.
Well,
It depends on the type of.
then it's whoever knocks it down's problem.
It's It's probably an additional $5,000 to $7,000 for the flutes, the finial, and the bass. Ballpark. It can vary widely depending on the flute style or the bass style. And as you can imagine, there's a variety of different types out there.
But we're talking right now about Converse Street.
Converse at
Dickinson.
Dickinson, thank you.
Converse at Dickinson. So we're projecting what we might want to do with Longmeadow Street, but this is specifically for that.
We also have a project, the casino mitigation funds, looking at Laurel and Converse, Converse and 5, and 5 and Forest Glen. So this might set the standard for some of those improvements.
But if we decide to treat Longmeadow Street differently, we can always do that also. Because something tells me, I have to go back and look at Longmeadow Street and see if we don't have fluted now. We definitely don't, down near the green,
I'm
the
nearly
historic area.
positive we don't have fluted poles
No.
anywhere in
So-
town. And when I worked in the city of Worcester, it's funny, in Worcester's a big city, but they periodically get grants for streetscaping. And actually VHB's office has an office in Worcester. I'm sure Matt can attest to this. They would choose unique streetscaping things like textured crosswalks, fluted poles, green poles, black poles, and it got to the point where it really was counterproductive because everything was different. And I remember, and I'm from the city of Lowell, and I worked for the city of Lowell, and I remember somebody in the city of Worcester gave a presentation with streetscaping. In Lowell, everything was consistent. Consistent color, consistent type, style, everything was the same no matter what. And they made the point and illustrated through comparing Worcester to Lowell that it's consistency that's key, not decoration. And that's where I think, especially, like I said, a lot of communities, and if you look at the intersections pictured, or especially this one, a lot of the communities use decorative poles as kind of a beautification for a neighborhood.
Right.
Longmeadow does not need that. And so I think because it is a visually attractive community, we want the flute. My recommendation would be the signal pole should kind of blend into the background, and not stand out as a decorative item. That's, but if the select board feels it's worth the extra money to do it, it's 5 to 7 per pole, and we're going to be doing a bunch of them. I would question whether it's worth it.
Well, it's the architectural theme of the town, and we haven't done much on that. Because, to me, there should be a standard in the historic zone of this community, of the light poles and everything else. And if it's fluted, it's fluted, and you just stick with it. You don't have to do it once you get out of that zone. But I don't, these are all fluted here. All of these pictures, it looks like they're all fluted, including the small ones. So, I mean, a lot of communities do go for fluted poles. They do resonate more from the historic side of a community, other than the slick poles. But it's more of an architectural. What do you want to see in the town? And you're right, we do not have that the hardscape and the softscape manuals up to where we determine what we want to see in the green.
Do we need, go ahead, Mark.
I was just going to say, when I see this picture, the one in Framingham, especially the pole on the left with the base to it, and I'm not sure about the yellow finial on top, but in the fluted pole, I think it looks handsome is the best word I can give you. I think, Stephen, no matter how much you try, these poles never really blend into the background. So my preference is to give it a little bit more style, but more importantly, we have a group of folks who we entrust to what I'll call the character of the town, and that's our historical society, not the historical district, but the historical society. And I think it'd be interesting to get their perspective. If tonight you're asking me, I really like these ones in Framingham. I guess the question I had for you folks, for Mario and for Matt, is my reading on this is that there are going to be 3 of these poles, 2 what I'll call on the land of the JCC, or on the corner where the JCC is. That's where I'm reading this by Dick, right? And
Two. Sorry, go ahead.
Yeah. There's 2, and they're on opposite opposite, one directly across from Dickinson as you are coming from Springfield.
Right.
And then the other one, as you're coming from Springfield, right there on the right, there's a big grass area that's owned by the town. It's
Right, but
it's in
I
front,
said
yeah.
on the land, but that's the JCC's corner.
Yeah.
The two poles will be similar to where the
So-
poles for the span wire are now. They move
Right,
slightly,
right, but I'm looking at this thing, and it looks like literally as you're coming from Dickinson towards Springfield, and the picture I've got, you're coming down, and as it turns, there's a pole going across Dickinson, but it looks like there's another one that comes down across Converse Street, that there's a second one there, in addition to the third one that's directly opposite.
I guess I don't know are you looking at?
I'm looking at the
plan.
Oh,
It could be existing.
no, but
we have plans.
yeah, but
Unless are you looking at existing, or what are you?
there, of course,
Oh, yeah.
no, but there's this mast pole here, and there's that mast pole there, and there's another.
Oh, no,
mast
that's a
pole
stop
there.
bar. That's a stop
Yeah,
line.
this is, I think that's a push button, maybe? A ped button?
But there's nothing across Dickinson?
This is that's a stop line for that approach. This is a mast arm, and that's a mast arm, and that's a post.
So where are these people looking
Right
at their?
Right here.
So these triangles are the signal heads, so they're over-exaggerated, they don't stick out that far, but that's just showing the head is pointing in that direction.
And I think there's
Okay.
also a pole that may not be on that.
Because right now, as
There's a
you come
second
down
pole.
Dickinson, there's actually a couple of lights, one for a left turn, one for a right turn. They're two different
Right.
lights, and you're gonna replace, it looks like you're only gonna replace it with that one facing there?
No, there's a single pole with a second light on it.
Right. There's a vertical, there's the mast arm that has a pole, and then there's another,
So in addition to these
Posts.
mast arms, there's gonna be street-mounted, or street single poles, kind of like this picture in Framingham that there's a
Yes.
light here
Yes.
in addition to the mast arms.
that's
Yes.
correct.
I think it's just that one
It's
now.
just that one location. On,
So why are we doing, I mean, I thought the idea of the mast arms was that we didn't have these. If we're gonna have these, why don't we just keep them all?
because of the utility and because of the location of where that second mast arm is going across the street, we can't get the overhead, the visibility of the overhead for that approach to be in a cone of vision for the right turn lane. So we have to put a head on the post, and that's why there's one on that opposite. That one post that you're seeing on the plans directly opposite Dickinson Street, there's a signal head indicator on that for that right turn lane.
I understand that, but I'm getting mixed signals here.
Yeah.
So help me understand here that
Good point.
we're putting up mast arms because we want to get away from the posts. But we're not getting away from the posts, so why don't we go to all
You're
posts?
getting away
No,
from the
the
span
wires.
wires.
Yeah, want to get with.
Not the post.
So you do have posts for
Put them all on.
Cable wire.
for
Right,
pedestrian.
but,
Right.
and I'm saying, so why don't we put them all up on the mast arm?
Yeah, there is an example where they're all done on the mast arm, right?
Well, so there are, but in this particular case, you have posts, you have, most of the posts that you see on the plan are for pedestrian push buttons and for the signal head indicators for crosswalks. So those have to, in order to meet certain ADA requirements, they have to be a certain distance away from the wheelchair ramps. And so we can't do that because of the overhead utilities. We can't use the same posts that you see in this picture. You can't use the same vertical post to put that indicator on there, where a lot of times you can. So that's why you have these separate posts, and they're placed at different areas at that intersection. So when you see those triangles that I was pointing out, those are the face plates of these signal heads, and that is telling you the direction that they're being pointed at.
Okay, but, I mean, I see it's a circle here, it says prop signal post, and then there's another one, prop signal post with pedestrian push buttons and video detection. And then,
Yes.
and that's, as you're coming down Dickinson Street toward the intersection,
On the
it's
left.
on the left.
Yep.
And then on the other side, there's a couple of those also,
Yep,
and we got posts all over the place on this stuff.
yep. And there's two
We've got
driveways.
prop signal post with pedestrian pedestrian push button, another prop signal cabinet, and a prop signal post. I mean, so there's like 6 or 7 different posts in here.
Yep, and that is to accommodate the driveways that are out there today, and I believe a lot of those are there. Some of those are there today, and again, they're added for there's 2 driveways that have to be signalized as part of this as part of this project, because they fall right in the middle of the intersection. The only other option would be to close the residential driveways.
Just as a reference, Matt, we tried for, I'm just going to say years, because I don't know whether it's 10 years or more.
Sure.
The light that goes in there, we got all kinds of opposition from the state because it is opposite a driveway.
Mhm.
It was very, very difficult to get that light put in there. And that light's not been there that long. It was just a stop sign on Dickinson Street for a long, long time because of that
Mhm.
driveway right opposite Dickinson Street.
Mhm.
So I understand the situation. I'm just amazed by the number of posts we're going to have here, when I thought the whole idea of the mast arms was to eliminate posts. So my question is, if we're not going to eliminate posts, why don't we just go to all posts, which is more in keeping with the character of the town?
Because I think you need more posts to accommodate what the overhead mast arms are doing now. So you can only put one signal head on a post. So when you look at the mast arms and count up how many heads are on the post, those are the additional posts that you'll need. So, so if you count up just on the mast arm, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 heads that are on the mast arms today. That would probably be around 5 or 6 additional posts just to get that. And I don't think we could get the design to work just with posts, because DOT requires you having at least one overhead signal head visible overhead, and then you have to have line of sight. And a lot of those, when you do the posts nowadays, you can't get line of sight for left turn lanes that are out into the middle of the road for left turns and have visibility without doing some sort of median or to put the post or something where you can get the visibility of that head to work. In a lot of cases now with the new standards, you can't. I know, and I can appreciate, with the driveway and the issues I believe this intersection was designed in the 90s, if I remember correctly, 91, 92. And there's been a lot of change since then from DOT's policy with respect to signal heads, ADA requirements, and as such. So I definitely appreciate your comments, and I know it's been a challenge to try to get something on here that doesn't have a lot of vertical additional posts. We tried to minimize it the best that we could, but yet still meet what DOT's requirements would be for this project, and to meet the other industry standards that need to be met for signal design.
Thank you.
And as far as the cable wires, the cable, we can't just ask them to change those? I mean, that's...
So the big thing with reusing the existing cables, there's no record information for how deep the foundations are out there today, what the span wire was designed for in the past. So to reconfigure and put new signal heads on those wires, there's no way that we can verify if it's structurally sound to accommodate what we want to do, and the current heads don't line up well today with what we were proposing, so we can't reuse.
But I guess I was thinking more about the cable. When you mentioned cable wires that were an obstruction, that was cable television, right?
Comcast, correct.
Comcast. I mean, they make a lot of money off our town. I mean, there's a lot of people who are subscribers. I mean, wouldn't it be easier for them just to move the wires, or?
So the issue with them is they're the bottom line, I guess, on the pole, which I believe, I don't know who owns the pole. I think it's Verizon that owns the pole, which then Eversource has an agreement with Verizon and Comcast to stay a certain offset away from their lines, and right now they're at that max. And if we could move their line down a little bit, then we might get the perpendicular to work. But the problem is the next utility pole is on the other side of Dickinson Street. So if you're coming down Dickinson to the left, and it's a pretty good span, and there's a sag in the wire, so even if we were to drop it like a foot, the span wouldn't meet the vertical clearance for trucks coming through the intersection. So those two poles would have to be raised up, and all the wires would have to be raised up, and there's some transformers and other things that are on those poles that would have to get moved up as well, which ends up being a substantial cost of the project, not to mention a delay in getting it designed.
And the cost wouldn't go to the cable company, the electric companies, no, go to us?
That's
Okay.
really the reason why the state has agreed to pay for the decorative. They don't normally do that, as Matt stated before, but this actually will fit with not having to touch that, so they've agreed to pay for it.
Oh, okay. Well, that'd be good. Well, I almost get a sense that people are interested in the fluted poles. I know if that's, maybe we should just, I don't know if we should ask the Conservation Commission.
Historic-
I think that's a good
Or if we
idea.
should just vote
Historic
on it.
Commission?
I mean, should we just put a motion forward? I mean, I know, well,
Why don't we,
Yeah.
doesn't have to be done tonight, does it, Stephen?
Oh, they're going, you heard him say they're going to bid
Bid
Saturday.
on Saturday.
And if the Historical Society says, and I don't want to be the skunk at the garden party here, but if the Historical Society says, we want the fluted, who comes up with the $15,000 extra that we don't have for the project? Them?
Well, first of all, I don't think it should be the Historical Society. I think it should be the Historical Commission, because we don't
Oh,
have.
you said Historical Society first.
Then I'm
You said-
sorry.
You said not, and you said not the Historical Commission. I'm like,
No,
all
not
right.
the Historical District Commission is
The
what I
Historical
meant to say.
Commission.
But the Historical Commission. We appoint the Historical Commission. The Historical Society is a private nonprofit. But I think the point is if we want, if that's their recommendation, I think, you know, among other things, we may go to the Community Preservation Fund or someplace else to come up with the additional funding. But, you know, I got to tell you, Maria, we got to do this tonight because it's got to be submitted. I mean, that seems to happen to us all the time. And you know, we're being given these last-minute decisions. Well, I'm sorry, Stephen, but
It's Mass DOT's project, Mark.
it's Mass DOT's project, but it's our town, and I've been talking now for the last 3 months about the character of the town, and nobody seems to care about the character of the town, and I think...
That's not true.
Well, I
Well,
think.
the Mass DOT
yeah.
doesn't seem to care about the character of the town.
I think the fact that they are agreeing with us with a decorative mast arm,
Because the wires are in the way, is what I heard.
but
not
they still don't
because
have to. They still don't have to do.
Well,
They still don't have to do that.
fine.
And I think our designer and me and our director of public works all care about the character of town. We talked a lot about that, and I think Matt. I can tell you from working with Matt, we had a lot of conversation on ways where we could minimize poles and could consolidate things as much as possible to minimize the impact on our landscape. And that's what this design represents. So I don't think it's true to say that nobody cares about the character of the community. What we are trying to do is get an effective traffic management system that most closely meets the character of the community, and that, I think, is what he has presented.
Now, I understood you said if we went with the fluted, all those little extras like the base and the top piece can be added later. Is that correct?
Yes.
What's I'm sorry, what's the cost of those?
Just those two pieces?
Right.
I think
There's much,
it could vary greatly just depending on the type of base you pick. I mean, they could be 2,000, they could be 5,000. It just depends. And then the Finio might be.
Because
you know,
I like those. And it might mean that if you have a smooth pole, and then you have those down the line, it kind of accomplishes what you're talking about.
you could do that. You could put in the smooth poles and then add these features later. Obviously, you can't change the pole, but.
So the one thing, and not to, you know, put you all in a spot, in a position, and I know a lot of this has kind of come out of nowhere over the last 3-4 weeks as a result of, you know, racing to the finish line here to get this out the bid, but the one thing we could try to do is, if you wanted fluted, we could try to work in fluted into the spec now, before it goes out the bid, which is this Saturday. Right now, we're smooth, but we can, I think if we reach out to DOT, we might be able to get the fluted in, but to make a decision on the clamshell base, the style, the size, or the finial type is just not, you know, unless I can get something more specific into the spec now, which doesn't sound like would be the case, but since those are things you can add on, and you can order those, you know, from a variety of different vendors, and you probably would want to vet that more so. But I guess in what we were talking about was whether going smooth or fluted. Smooth seemed to be kind of the more neutral, you know, rather than getting into something that was fluted and more detailed. And since this location, you know, it's not really grouped with a bunch of other intersections, it's kind of a standalone location. You know, if this was the Laurel Street, Converse Street, and the Long Meadow Street Route 5, and, you know, Forest Glen, those three, since they're so close and you can see them, then especially, you know, if that's the kind of entering in town sort of thing, you maybe the conversation would be a little bit different, but we thought that the smooth pole would be more appropriate for this location, and for, long-term, if the city was going to put forward, Chapter 90 money or other money that wouldn't necessarily go through DOT where they wouldn't fund it, at least it'd be less of a cost or a burden on the town long-term, especially if one of these poles get replaced, it becomes more cost for the fluted pole versus the smooth pole.
I guess if I could just build on Matt's point for a minute. One of the first things we started with in this conversation is what's out there today. Because if you want to talk about the character of the community, it's how it looks today. And it's smooth poles all over town. And I'm going to guess that at some point in time the decision was made to go smooth poles because they're cheaper than the fluted poles. And I think I've never heard anybody complain that we don't have fluted traffic signals. So the smooth poles are the character of the town as we sit here today. And oh, by the way, they're less expensive. And that is really what we started with. And then when Mass DOT allowed the decorative mast arm and gave us the option, the conversation was, well, it's smooth today, so why don't we just stick with what we got? I think anything but smooth is a change. And that's, that was my really main consideration, because I know sometimes people don't, on things like this, sometimes people don't like a lot of change. And even though it is a standalone location, you could probably do a different treatment to this intersection than others. I just didn't see the reason why you would, because even though you could wrap this down, bring it down Converse, you go down Long Meadow Street, you've still got Maple and Long Meadow and Bliss and Long Meadow that are not going to be changed potentially. And then down at the other end of the town, or South Ave, and those aren't changing. So it was really consistency with what we have.
Would you say we have about 14 intersections in town?
There are
How many?
I think that's about right, 12,
14?
13, something like that.
And how many
Edgewood.
are we going to have replaced in the next few years with the work we're going to do on Converse and Long Meadow Street?
So we have a proposal for the four, Forest Glen and Route 5, Converse and Route 5, Laurel and Converse, all coming up within the next, well, I think we're hoping sooner than later. That's the casino mitigation funds.
Okay.
Route 5 is on the 2020 tip for the state.
Yeah.
So there's some potential. So that would be Bliss and Route 5, and then Maple, I think, is the only other one, right? Am I missing one in between? Yes.
Edgewood.
Edgewood, and I'm missing
Side street.
the other side of.
By the CVS there.
No, I'm thinking of
The other end.
the other end of the green, where it cuts over to
Oh,
Crestview.
yeah.
Oh, yeah, the end of the green, yeah. I mean,
So those potentially would be done in 2020. And then, obviously, there's some work being done at Dwight, and so depending on how that development moves forward, there might be some work that has to happen at Williams, and then potentially in
Smith.
Teesong Meadow.
So it won't take long until
there's
half
a lot of
our
moving
poles-
pieces here.
Yeah, half of our poles, and
Yeah.
maybe more, will be replaced. So if we're going to make a change, this would be the time to do it. I mean, we couldn't wait. And, once we put these in, we're kind of stick with solid. I mean, so if there's a sense from the board that we want to make a change, I think we should just do it. It would make it easier if we could vote on it. I would forward a motion that we do go with fluted poles.
I'll
for
second.
this.
All
Okay.
right, further discussion?
Yeah, you wouldn't have a problem putting a second bid item in, and a straight pole and a fluted pole, it's just another line item.
I would have to pose that to DOT since they control the contract documents and the bidding documents.
Right.
And I would not put it past them to say no, only because they've already started pulling together contract documents. And to do any alt bid items, they typically don't do alt bid items as a department because it makes it a little more complicated, and they might make it entirely non-participating and put the whole cost on the town, because that's how they would normally do some sort of alternate bid like that. And there'd have to be another spec and an alternate plan, and then they'd have to review it. And I would say, given the time frame, there's no way that they would be able to review the two and make sure that the two are
Well, the
separate.
spec is already out there by these light pole manufacturers. I mean, you've got a fluted pole that you're showing here.
I know, but we would have to write up a specification that
Right.
would go into the contract documents, and then it has to get reviewed by both the district office in Northampton and Boston.
Your spec is already there, isn't it, not for the load carrying capabilities?
The load capabilities come by the manufacturer
Right.
later on. So it's, for us, it's putting in the spec, fluted or not fluted, essentially, and right now we have not fluted.
Right. But all the other technical aspects are met. Your loading
Right.
and everything else is done.
We don't put loading in our, that's up to the contractor to show us, to give us a pole that shows us the loads that be met based on DOT's design standards. But yeah, we have to put still information in there as to what the contractor will be bidding as part of this. So to have two options, I think, complicates the process. And
But wouldn't the two options be exactly identical as far as the engineering aspects? It'd just be fluted or straight?
yeah, it would just be how they're going to bid
The
it.
fluted is the fluted that I've messed around with. It's not the support structure, it's just cosmetic.
Yep. Nope. It is. It's just it's listing two separate items in the bid contracts and how DOT wants to handle that. And they'll probably come back and say, we're not doing two, pick one. Or it's too late, you're sticking with what you're having.
Okay, could we get that information?
What information's that? Whether
What
or
you
not they,
just said?
whether or not they would do
Right.
one or I can make a phone call tomorrow, but I know what their answer is going to be. Only because they're bidding Saturday, and they'll tell me not to change anything. And I'm not saying that DOT is going to be a hard you know what to just say they're getting it done, but it's it's the 11th and a half hour of the process of getting this out, and I know unfortunately we're here now talking about it, but this was something that just came up recently.
One option we may have, it's 6 months from bid opening to notice to proceed at Mass DOT to get a contract completed. So we could have some time to work on potentially an amendment or a change order or something like that.
I would say that if that was the case, we should go with fluted now, and then change to try to change back to smooth if that was the
Because
case.
smooth is a cheaper option.
I would assume so, yes. So I would say if we can modify our specs now, if I can get that in there and get that to DOT and without them
Kicking it back.
kicking it back or really catching it.
Yeah.
I mean, I could put fluted in now, and then if you decide to change, I would think any contractor would say, oh, I got to go smooth? Okay, that's less. So there would be no, cost overruns. Plus, the town's going to have to sign an agreement on a 110% agreement with DOT, so anything that runs above and beyond, the contract at the end of the day, you'll be responsible for, that. So that could be one of those items, not to say that it would be, 10% running over, but, you don't know.
Now, if we were able to do any negotiations with Comcast, because they're going to help us pay for the different arm, right? No, who's going
The
to?
No.
state's funding
The
that.
state's
The
funding.
utility
Oh, the
Tom, in
state.
situations like this, the utility companies do not pay anything.
They never help.
It's not help, it's just not obligated.
Right.
The line doesn't need to move but for our project, so it's our responsibility.
Okay.
And so that's not, and again, there, like I said, there is a cost component to doing this, and I, it really is 6 of one and half dozen of the other. We're just trying to do what we feel is the most efficient thing
The
for
only
the
thing
project.
I was going to say was that now the fluted pole is great. It sounds like maybe because you can go back on to smooth, it sounds like the way to go. But you realize now we're going to have a third of the poles fluted and the rest of them all smooth.
Right.
I just-
On the main streets, though, on Converse Street and on Long Meadow Street, those will all be fluted, which, I think that's a step. Eventually, the other poles are going to have to be switched out. But hopefully not a long time. Hopefully it'll be in the future, but,
Okay, any other questions or comments?
Just-
Yeah.
Matt, I just have a question. The picture that we're seeing, I'm just looking at a framing here on the left side, the fluted pole with the big base. Do we have to change the specification for the footing to be bigger also? Just so that if we want a collar around it, we...
No, because the footing, the base itself is not structurally supporting
We just put any
the
kind of
post.
pad there afterwards and just...
Right.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I think, before we close it, I think I've heard everything Stephen said, and I understand what he's saying, but I think this is a major departure in our community, and we're changing a massive amount of visual quality on these intersections. So it is a new leap forward, and I think I agree with Mark. I'd like to see the historic people weigh in and say, what do they want to see? What's their feelings? It's going to be main corridor. It may never creep into the side streets. It may never get there, but it could get there. But the main corridor, because we're just starting to replace the main corridor.
Yeah.
And, yeah.
So I also just so that I guess we're on the same page. So in the photo with the Framingham, it actually shows the posts, the signal posts, as fluted. But DOT will not. They're only saying that they'll pay for the ornamental for the mast arms. So those posts would not be fluted. So in this particular, if you went with fluted for the mast arms, the posts would be smooth.
Oh, so we would
So
be.
you won't have fluted
So
everywhere.
you counted the post, the single post with the signal on it, Mark?
Yeah.
That particular post would not be covered by the state if we wanted to make that fluted. The smooth one would be. So even among that entire intersection, you could have a different variety if we didn't pay the upcharge to have them all fluted.
I take
Right, I understood that.
Oh, okay.
I thought, in fact, I thought that applied also to the mast arm posts, support posts. The state's not going to pay for that being fluted either.
They will pay for the mast arm post and arms
Being
because
fluted.
of, yes,
Okay.
they're paying for the ornamental
Oh,
one.
so the only difference is the individual posts, these?
Main-
Those would be
Those-
smooth.
The vertical?
Unless we specify otherwise and pick up the difference.
Right.
Well, you guys would pay the
Okay.
The change order.
So the state is going to pay to make this fluted and this fluted?
Right.
Oh, that's what I thought the discussion was.
It is. I just was clarifying, just so, because you were talking about changing the style, and now I just wanted to make sure
Well, it ought to
that
be
you can have.
consistent, whatever it is,
Right.
in my opinion.
Well, if you have an overhead vertical, if you're going fluted with that, then that's that standard, and all the vertical posts that are 8 or 10 feet would be smooth, then at least that's the standard that I think you want to make sure, and you're not going fluted for everything.
Well, I thought we would have. I don't know. I mean, that's what I thought the intent was. Just do everything, you know.
Okay.
Everything fluted?
I thought that's what I was speaking about. I don't know what everybody else was thinking.
Yeah, I was thinking consistency, you know, if we could.
Okay, so we have a motion on the floor, and there's a second. Any other questions or discussion on this? And my understanding is we can request it. It doesn't mean that we'll get it, because it could be kicked back from Mass DOT in regards to this
Yeah,
project.
before you take the vote, I think there's another thing that needs to be talked about, at least brought out. It's a major change to our community.
Yeah.
And I think this is one hell of a place to be discussing it in the 11th hour. Period. This is unfair to the select board, and it's unfair to the community. This discussion should have been months ago, where we could sit and get the other people's input. And it's no individual fault. It's just the fact this is a major architectural change to our community. And the community is founded back in the 1700s, and you know as well as I do, fluted poles would have been here in that realm of history. That it would have been. They've likely been removed from our community, including the gas lamps and everything else. I mean, that's the only thing that irritates me, is that this should have been months ago, not at the 11th hour. And I know we're at the 11th hour.
Well, I think it's a good point, because we have a lot of projects coming up in the next, as you mentioned, in the next few months or year. And we probably should put them on a timeline so we could set them months ahead of time to look at the streetscape. But this was an issue in which we sort of had been running around the edges on where this was going to be in regards to who reviews this. And I know that was discussed a couple of times.
It was. I need to bring back some perspective, because we're kind of far out now. The major change, Richard, is from a span wire to a mast arm.
It's a major change.
The change from a from a smooth pole to a fluted pole is not major. That's minor.
No, that's not major.
So it was going to go to a mast arm because of the design and the project. What we're really arguing about is fluted versus smooth.
Right.
Okay? The town has it long before any of us were here, potentially, so maybe some of you were here. Not in these chairs, though. The town had the opportunity to buy fluted poles for traffic signals all over, and they somehow, past decision makers chose not to do that. I don't know why. We were trying to stay consistent with that. So I think we're really expanding or making more out of the net effect of this discussion than is really there. the change from the span wire to the mast arm is going to happen, was always going to happen as part of the project. A few months ago, there potentially wasn't even a project. And as Matt said, I was at the meeting, it was in mid-July, where we did the site walk and looked at the utilities. That's when these types of decisions were made, because design was kind of held up pending the discussion of the right-of-way plan. You were in the meeting in January when we went through all of this. So, in fairness to us, it wasn't a lack of, commitment to the town or anything like that. It's Mass DOT's project, and it's kind of how the process has just unfolded. For the projects on the Long Meadow Street, those are going to be town projects, very different. That on those, you can absolutely do that. We just didn't have the opportunity because it's not our. We had certain things we had to do, mainly the right of way, and the rest of the decision making is the highway department's.
Yeah, I think we've also discussed the fact that this board hasn't made that type of decision before in regards to signaling, and we are now sitting down and saying we want to start making these decisions. So it's not as if this has been, like you said, that's been sitting on the table and we just haven't addressed it. It's the first time we're really addressing this and making some decisions on how we want the treescape and just having these discussions. And I think it's worth it to talk to the Historic District and the Historic Commission and sort of talk to residents in the area to see how they feel. But as I said, we're trying to take that step forward. It might not happen. Mass DOT is going to tell us. And if we need to go back to smooth later, we can always change order it down. But the other question is, where do we start putting our resources? And this will be placing our resources in treescape, which means there aren't resources to go. So again, it's balancing where we want to put things. And I think visual standards in the town's been important. So we're ready for vote, everybody?
What are you voting on?
Voting, the motion was put on that we request that the bid go out to include fluted.
Okay.
That we request.
That we request,
Yeah,
yeah.
question.
But it could be kickback, you're saying.
I have a question. So fluted for everything, or
Yeah.
fluted just for the mast arms?
Well,
Yeah, I think the motion, basically, we'd like to request that all the poles are fluted, mast arms.
The
That's what we'd like to
mast arm
comment.
wouldn't be fluted.
The mast, the vertical in this could be fluted. The vertical, I've seen them fluted the whole thing, the vertical and then the arm.
Really? I've
But-
never seen the arms fluted.
What's that?
I've never seen the arms fluted.
Yeah,
That's
they
what
have
I'm
some that are, I think the ones in Springfield are fluted.
Downtown, Main Street.
Really?
So, but there are some that aren't fluted. But my concern is that where this stage is with DOT, that asking for all the mast arms to be fluted, that we have an option to do, I think I can get into the spec, the fluted for the mast arms, but not all the poles. If I go back to them for all the poles, they're going to call that a non-participating item, look for the town to pay for it. And at this stage of the game, they've already identified anything that's been non-participating, which is nothing for this project. It's been all DOT.
okay.
And I know as soon as I go back to DOT, because they're advertising it this Saturday, that they're going to say, don't touch anything, leave it. That's what you're going to get.
So what if we ask for
And I'm not
all the
trying to,
vertical poles, but not the horizontal ones?
I think the PED posts, the 8 to 10 foot posts that we're
Yeah.
talking about, that'll be the one that, pokes the bee's nest, I guess, so to speak, with DOT.
Let me offer something here. Maybe we try to get the fluted in for the mast arm, and let Mass DOT put in the smooth post. We have plenty of accidents in town where it'd be great to have a nice supply on hand. And then maybe as a town, we decide to go back and replace these with the fluted ones so they match. And we take the ones down that are there. Now, that's not the best way to do business, but considering where we are right now, I offer that as for your consideration.
For the mast arm vertical, the vertical part of the mast arm
The horizontal and the vertical,
would both be fluted.
correct,
And you're saying, but the standalone,
are not, and they're not spec'd that way. And they will not pay for it, nor will they probably allow us to change it at this point.
I don't think it's that bad.
So is the motion still only to put in for who put on the original motion? Was you?
Well, yeah, I made the motion to do, the fluted poles, because we'd start that process across town. And I guess we could request them, and then they'll get back to us, like, Stephen has said, this is still quite a ways out, we could make some changes, right?
Not before
No.
the bid.
So, well, once they turn us down, then we couldn't pay for it as a town if we wanted.
Once, then you're into what Mario was just suggesting about maybe if they get knocked down, you can replace them, or we purchase fluted poles and go through and have our signal contractor go through and swap them out. I need to express my opinion that
Mhm.
I cannot fathom how we feel like that's worth spending infrastructure money to do versus just a straight black pole with the needs we have. I just don't get, I don't see the bang for the buck there.
Okay, so are we ready for a vote? But I need to clarify the vote. It's your recommendation, we only request the mast arms.
I think, right.
Mast
Vertical.
arms and mast support vertical poles.
Both. So is that going to be your motion? or-
So let me just make, this is the mast arm,
Yeah, in other words, it'd be this and that.
Right,
This
both.
and that,
all the way across.
not the smaller ones
Not the
that were
smaller
up.
ones.
And the
correct.
smaller ones would be,
Smooth.
well, that would be a start. I think if we had those fluted, and then if we decided at some point to replace the smaller ones, we could do that. Like you said, and switch out those places,
Testing.
those
Okay.
parts. Yeah, I mean, if that, sounds like that would be the motion we would make. And I don't know if you'd still second that.
Yeah, I guess.
You guess so, okay.
All right, any further discussion? All those in favor? All those opposed? Okay, thank you for coming in and going through all this with us. Do you want your pictures back?
If I could, no, you can keep those. If I could just say that I understand and I can appreciate the 11th hour thing. That is not something that I would like to duplicate in the
Yeah.
future. Obviously, we want to get these things to you as soon as we can, but this timeline didn't allow that.
And I want to also tell you, I'm enjoying your reports. Your monthly reports are
Thank you.
very, very thorough.
And for the
Thank you.
record, it's not your problem.
Well, I know, but it's my department and
No, it is
I,
not your problem, it's not Stephen's problem. It's a town problem that we don't have some of these systems in place.
thank you,
Okay,
appreciate
It's
that.
a town problem, believe me, and it was there many years before any of us were in these positions we're in. But it's something that we need to correct as we move forward, Mary.
Agreed. If I could just make one
Yeah.
last statement or recommendation, I guess, moving forward, if you're doing any other work, projects in town with DOT, if
Yeah.
this was to become a standard, I would suggest that DPW implement some sort of standard for signalized intersections that makes it easier for us if we're bidding something for the DOT, that it has to adhere to the town standards. And then there might be a way that we can incorporate that as part of this, whether it's a non-participating cost or not. It makes it that much easier if there is a standard in place.
Do you need a policy or just a
Just a
standard?
standard.
Just a
DPW
standard, like, I don't know, DPW probably has, standard details for sidewalks and things like that, to add something for the signals.
Let me
just-
know when that might be ready with the town manager, and
Yeah, you
I'll
guys can
just have
review
it
it.
in a packet in the future.
Okay.
Well, could a unanimous vote be considered a standard?
No.
No, it's
No.
specs, right?
And again,
It's a document.
It's a town-wide standard that I think you're
Yeah.
right.
Mass DOT is paying for 100% of the project.
Yeah.
And now we're putting money into the project that is not currently appropriated to go this extra thing. I mean, we keep losing sight of that point.
It's
And
allocation of
So the standard
resources.
you're talking about, if we have our standard, like and Richard's right, a lot of towns do have like their own highway,
Right.
local road standards for things, and we don't. And I don't know why we don't, but we just don't.
Right.
And haven't. I mean, these things have been in place for decades in most other communities, in many other communities. I don't know about most. So what Mass DOT in the future is still going to do is say, adhere to town standards. They're still going to say, well, we're going to pay for this.
Yeah.
And to get fully your standards, you're paying for that.
Yeah, I know.
Marie,
Mark?
I'd ask that you send a note to a historic commission, asking them to weigh in on this
Okay.
request. And Mario, I don't know if we can get pictures of, different things around the state of what they look like, but certainly that will help them make their decision.
I'll use the electronic ones you sent, and I'll
Yes.
attach, if there's anything else that you feel is pertinent, send it to me as I send the letter. And I think I should send it to district, too,
You can-
Historic District
You can
as
get
well.
cut sheets off the internet. too,
Yeah,
from
but in the future,
manufacturer
we're
sheet.
talking about standards. They might want to see what they look like.
I can have one standard in the district.
Then why have a separate district commission then? I mean, it's the whatever.
Okay. Thank you very
Thanks.
much.
Thank you.
Anything else on town manager reports?
No.
Any questions for Stephen?
How was your vacation?
It was restful.
How's it been since you've been back?
It only takes 5 minutes.
I know,
2 weeks
unfortunately.
off, it only takes 5 minutes.
I know, that's the way it goes, Stephen.
Yeah. Thank you for asking.
Okay, moving along on the charter bylaw changes recommended for fall town meeting. I just wanted to, I'm making a list, and I'm going to put it on so everyone knows what's sitting out there. We've discussed in the past an ADA commission, a board alternates that comprise a quorum for committees should be allowed to vote, acting town manager to be able to sign warrants when the town manager's out of town, sidewalk clearance of trees and shrub bylaw, and neglected properties. I know, Bill, you wanted to talk a little bit about that.
Yeah, I've been looking into this. This all came up, I think, when it was at Woodland Terrace, when you had to go through all that housing court and what have you, just to be able to take care of the property. And that wasn't a foreclosed property. That was owned and the person's just out of town. So in our bylaws, all of that is handled with foreclosed properties, but not with properties that are owned and neglected. So it seems to me that if there were a bylaw change whereby you could enter onto the property and do the work and charge them for it without having to go to housing court or land court, that would make sense.
It's similar to the clean and lean that we previously discussed.
Exactly.
Yeah.
And so, I mean, I think just adding something simple into the bylaws under, what is it, Article, actually at the end of Article 4, Chapter 300, I think. Litter control, grass cutting. So it says, and this is just any property. Owner or person in control of any property shall at all times keep the property free of litter and shall maintain and cut long grass to a maximum of 6 inches. You could just add in there, and I've looked at other towns that have language like, for instance, no owner shall allow shrubs or any other vegetation, and that also handles the shrub sidewalk thing, I think, to constitute a nuisance as determined by the, in this particular town, I looked at health agent, I don't know who it would be here, to the health, safety, or appearance of the neighborhood where the property is located. If the health agent notifies the owner of the existence of the nuisance, said owner fails to correct the situation identified in said notice within 10 days. Date of the notice, the town may correct the nuisance through an independent contractor. The cost of the correction plus administration fee of $200 shall be assessed against the property and shall be a municipal charges lien under sections, whatever it is in the bylaws, and enforced as set forth.
Now, does that lien put it on the real estate property tax bill? Or only when there's, because the big thing is getting it when you send out the next utility or real estate property tax bill. Because if it goes against the lien, you only get the money at transfer, and that could be years.
I think that we probably ought to run that through legal.
Yeah. That's the big change we want to make, because right now, we can do all of that through the receivership or through other means, but we don't get the money until title transfer. And again, in the case of Woodland, that may never happen. I mean,
Right.
now that we have a receiver, that will happen, we will get our money, but if we had in receivership, as I think I've described, takes a long time. So I fully support that, and I think that I just want to make, the key thing is, we don't have a budget to do it, so we can't be out the money for too long, and so it's getting it back on a utility or real estate tax bill, and then have the charges start tolling immediately. And I think there are models out there that allow you to do that.
Bill had a really good idea the last time, which he said almost take the bylaw and reflect what we had done with the foreclosed property. And we have the language for it, and because we were discussing, like you had asked us, what would we like to have done? And I think we talked about painting, we talked about damage to the house, whether it's burned or a tree, and I thought his idea was very good to just try to reflect that.
Yeah,
Go ahead, Mark.
Sorry.
I was just going to comment that I mean, I support the proposal here. I think it's a good idea. The one thing that potentially of concern is who gets to say, what's neglected and as opposed to somebody's style. I mean, what level of peeling paint is objectionable, who's to say?
What is it, artistic?
Well, no, you're going to run into
Chevy
that.
chic.
But you're going to run into that, is it, are we creating standards that are, or policies that are subjective to some degree? And I don't have the answer, Bill, but to the extent that we might be able to come up with something, I think it would be helpful, because to say, and with the example you used, the health agent, but whether it's Beverly Hirschhorn or whether it's or it's our building inspector, somebody may say, I don't agree with his conclusion, and therein starts the battle, I think. And so the more we can try to define it, the better off we are, and in my opinion, the easier we're going to have a chance of getting this through town meeting, because I think that same issue will come up. I don't know.
I'm sure there's a best practice out there. A lot other towns do this. So what I do is say, let's look
you
at the
don't
best
neglect it
practices.
when you see it, but you got to be able to.
It's
put it
blight
in.
is really the thing. What is blighting? And
Right.
I think blight does have certain definitions. I'm sure there are in case law. And so let's look at best practices and work with our
I
attorneys.
was thinking, very sensitive to the fact that you don't have some of the people who are like, oh, wait, what I do on my property is my business. I don't want you coming over here telling me that my bushes are out of place or whatever. So it'd have to be something kind of subtle, and it'd have to be an obvious nuisance.
Richard?
Yeah, we already tell them the grass is too tall, so we've got to.
But we've got a quantitative measure.
It's the standards are out
Whether
there.
it's right or wrong,
Yeah.
we quantitate it.
Yeah, there's standards out there. We can get them off the internet. There's enough of those mean HOAs out there that they've written this up in full detail.
Great article in yesterday's Boston Globe magazine.
When you start,
Papers.
Bill, when you start talking about blighted properties from a real estate standpoint, say you've got a piece of property across the street from you, beside you, that is an ordinary person would say is blight. Okay, there's no doubt about it. They would say that is a unkept house. From a real estate standpoint, how much impact are we talking?
It's large. When I started looking at this, because the subject of rentals and blight came up, rentals have very little impact on property values, but neglected houses on neighborhoods really drive prices down. I mean, if you think about yourself, walking onto the street, you're going to look at a house, and you look across the street, and there's, the grass is a foot high, and there's that you wouldn't buy the house probably.
Well, again, it's a double shift. Not necessarily tax-wise, it doesn't lower the property value until the sales start taking place, but you can actually change even the type of person that would purchase that house.
Mm-hmm.
Because, I mean, social economically, you could be changing the dynamics of a community by not addressing blight.
Mm-hmm.
Or at least trying to address blight, because it creeps in. You're in real estate, you see it where it creeps in very slow.
Mm-hmm.
But it does rear its ugly head and start to affect pricing.
It can bring neighborhood prices down, 10-20%.
10 or 20. That's what I was wondering. 10 or 20%. That's a significant thing when people are talking about $400,000 and $500,000 and $600,000 homes. And I chatted with Marie. I said, this item I think we need to talk more and more about on the select board when the cameras are running, so that everybody starts to become aware that we're concerned about this. This is the long-term health of our community that we're trying to find out how to cure. And you're right, nobody wants to be told how to maintain their houses, this, that, and the other, but I also feel nobody has a right to degrade my property values by lack of attention to their house. And I personally can tell you, if I saw the houses like that, I wouldn't even consider buying a house beside it. Wouldn't even consider it. I mean, you just pass it by. The curb appeal's gone. If curb appeal doesn't ring, I don't open the door.
Right.
Mark?
Marie, just going back, the item 3 here, acting town manager to sign warrants, I thought we determined that wasn't as significant because it was we could stop in and it happens so infrequently kind of thing.
Well, no, it means we still have to stop in. It's smoother running to have it done like it's normally done with a town manager. He just said that if it was necessary for payroll to be signed three of us would have to come in and sign for it,
Okay,
while an acting town manager could do it with one signature. So it's either three of us have to line up or Paul Pasturja
Fine,
can do it.
I just
Yeah.
thought we had talked about it.
No, we had talked about it.
It wasn't the burden of having to call a select board meeting, fine.
Yeah.
I'm not-
Well, you're right. The good news is it's not the burden of calling a select board meeting. The bad news is it's still,
Hurting
there
us.
are many times where important things need to be signed by someone on a very short timeline.
Mm-hmm.
And to your select board combo not being available during the day, many times it has to be signed during the day.
Mm-hmm.
And so that's where this would be a key change. And I mean, I think, all departments report on our activities. The finance department gives a very detailed report about things that happen, so I don't think there's any, the auditors look at our controls. They brought this to our attention, and they made it clear they don't care which way it is. Doesn't matter to them in terms of an oversight, checks and balances thing, and I don't think it does. But you just need to follow what you're doing, and that's why I think in practice, having the acting town manager being able to sign, having signatory authority for the town manager, and then it's on town manager to make sure they appoint somebody responsible.
So, in regards to going back to the neglected property, I think one of the things I would add to it is just due process. So if someone is complaining that, my house isn't that bad, we have some sort of process where people can appeal the decision, whether it's in front of the planning board or, some group that they can go and appeal to. So I guess what I'm looking for is, are there any motions on the floor to take any of these 5 items to the next step? Would be to direct the town manager to prepare a neglected properties bylaw or a charter change warrant article for acting town manager to sign, or sidewalk
I
clearance.
think it's a bylaw thing, not a charter thing.
On the town manager one?
Oh, is it the?
I thought it was,
it
well,
could-
whatever
whatever
warrant
the
articles.
instrument is, yeah.
Whatever the instrument is.
Yeah.
So are there any motions to handle any of these 5 issues tonight? Is there a feeling on?
Yeah, I think we ought to move forward with the acting town manager sign warrants, the sidewalk clearance of trees and shrubs, and the neglected properties.
Okay, so you're putting them all 3 in one motion. Is there a second for
Second.
those? Okay, any further discussion on those 3? All those in favor? Okay. Those were the 3, the acting town manager to sign warrants, sidewalk clearance of all trees and shrubs, and neglected properties to put together a bylaw.
And I'd like to recommend to the chair, these other 2 items, they can stay active, but I think there
Yeah.
needs to be more of a briefing on these items.
Okay.
More information flow on what the AVA Commission is, the ins,
Yeah.
pluses and minuses.
I sent a lot of stuff in the packet and a description. I also gave my notes on the conversation with the general counsel from Boston, and so we can continue to research what
Right.
it is. But one of the things on the ADA Commission is it does not bring grants to us, okay? It says, it sets us up for later, we can apply for grants, but there is a cost to that first few steps, but I understood that we have actually started a lot of those steps, so I don't think we're ready to talk about the ADA Commission now. We'll probably ask Stephen to report later where we are in the whole process.
Yeah, my recommendation would be that it's discussed in this room while the camera's running.
Okay, and so I'll put it on future
Instead
one.
of just our emails that
Yeah, but review all that, and so I don't have to put it in the next packet.
I'll do it tonight.
Okay, no, but so that'll be, save it, and you can, when we put it on the next agenda, to ask. And if there's any other bylaw or charter changes, bring them up to me and we'll roll them into the packet. The only one we have so far is that we did vote last time for you to draft one, that appointment on boards and committees, we extend the period from 28 to 60 days between the interview and the appointment. Right now, we have to do it within 28 days, and if we have a lot of people interviewing for the same position, the chair last year found we ran into a problem.
It'll teach you to go on vacation, Stephen.
Okay, now moving on to policies to vote on or review. Right now, the policy that's still on the table is whether we're going to do anything with the vehicle policy. And it was requested by the board last time that we wait till the town manager was back so he could be involved with that. And another beginning policy review is, I just took the first 2 policies that are sitting in our booklet that was sent to everyone, and that's the ADA policy, and the other is the town health insurance policy. And my understanding, Stephen, is that you were already looking at the town health insurance policy and reviewing that as we speak. And also, I had asked Boston to tell us what some ADA policies that are used by other towns, and I sent some examples.
We have ADA policies.
Yeah, we have an ADA policy. We want to review our policies. It was done in 1999, see if there's any change we need to do in it.
Well, I think it was reviewed more recently than that.
Oh, so there's a newer one that not looking at?
I think I sent you the thing that we submitted to FHWA. I think it was recently more updated.
Okay, I'll look over that for the next meeting, if you could send that out to the whole group, because I don't remember seeing that.
Okay.
Marie, I was looking at and you sent us a bundle of stuff on electric vehicles and electric vehicles.
Because there was a request on if there were any
Right, no,
grants
right,
available, and that's what I tried to send out to you.
I guess my question is, what is it we're trying to achieve through potentially adopting these policies? Is it just be a better greener community? Is it to save energy costs for the town? Is it to be the most fiscally responsible to the town? I think we need to establish what our goal is, because that'll help me identify where we want to go with some of these. And I don't necessarily have the answer to that.
Well, I think that the task force would say that they would like us to be a greener community. One of the reasons that I think I was pushing it forward is not so much a political view, but to save money. I think that coming down the line, going away from gas, right now gas prices are really low, but I don't imagine they're going to stay that way in the next 5 to 10 years. And so
That's the great unknown.
the other advantage is if you diversify your fleet, you protect yourself from a spike in prices that are coming down the way.
Yeah, I mean, I got to tell you, if somebody told me gas was going to be under $2 a gallon
Yeah.
in 2016, and they said that 5 years ago, I said, you're out of your mind. I mean, and so, there's absolutely no way to know. And I guess my big question is, and for the record, I have a hybrid car, so, it's not that I'm opposed to this, but I think we do have a fiscal responsibility of the town to say, if these cars remain 15 to 20% more expensive from capital point of view, and they have a long-term payout, we might want to be looking at what's, balancing our fiscal responsibility with our desire for a green community and to go electric and all that kind of stuff. Again, I don't think we can ever predict what the future price of fuel is going to be, but I think we need to certainly look at all that kind of stuff. And so adopting a blanket policy that says we're just going to do this on a philosophical basis may be interesting, but we may want to look at it. On the other hand, we don't have a whole lot of cars that fall into this category. I mean, especially if you exclude our police or fire, and this doesn't necessarily
And the
exclude them.
policy just says you should consider it. If
So-
in the analysis, the town manager says, wow, we're at $2 a gallon, and right now the grants are not available to subsidize, then he would come with an explanation as, I really can't buy a hybrid vehicle because the governor just pulled the pricing out from underneath us, or electric vehicle, or it makes sense. It's just to consider. It sort of expands our current policy, which says look at fuel-efficient cars, and now it just sort of adds look at fuel-efficient cars plus hybrid and electric, and discuss why.
Didn't our current policy already say that?
No.
I
It just
thought
says fuel
When we adopted the
efficiency.
green community policy, it said we would look at fuel-efficient vehicles,
I
doesn't it?
compared the two, we pulled the two out, and it
Tell us to
didn't.
do
I thought
that.
so.
I thought so,
Yeah.
too.
I think the big thing, the number one consideration in purchasing a vehicle is what is it being used for? Far more than how much gas does it use or anything else. It's what is it being used for? Because if you don't have the right vehicle for the right job, then you are truly wasting money. I think, and as Mark alluded to, we don't make a lot of vehicle purchases that would really fit the profile of a plug-in. Or, hybrids are a little better, but they don't, but the ones that are like an all-wheel drive hybrid are very expensive. And so I'll give you an example. We just purchased it's not an Equinox. Yeah, maybe it's a Chevy Equinox, a little small-sized SUV, like a Ford Escape class. They're all-wheel drive, but they're smaller and more fuel-efficient all-wheel drive vehicles, and that's what we got our assistant director for water and sewer. He's out in the wintertime or in the middle of the night and water main breaks and has to sometimes go,
Right.
off-road to get to a water main or a sewer or something like that. It's an appropriate vehicle for him to have to perform his job. If you were going to buy me a new car or the assessor a new car, plug-in or a hybrid's perfect. We don't need to drive out in the wintertime. I mean, and if I needed to, I would borrow a different vehicle. If it was an emergency and I needed to get out, I would just find a different one. But day to day, it's fine for administrative vehicles like that. There just aren't a lot of those around. And so I honestly thought I just don't want a policy that, pushes us towards making vehicle purchase decisions based on efficiency goals, which are already a matter of, being greener and more energy efficient is already a matter of policy in the town. But I don't want it to be too far, so we're limited in the choices we can make, because like I said, the primary consideration is the operational consideration.
No. And, I mean, I would think that this board is aware of that perspective, and so when it came to buying new vehicles, we would look at the use and say, well, we need something just locally, we could get electric, or if we need something to drive to Boston or different trainings with, we could get a hybrid. Because it's more than just the fuel, too. I mean, there are other, it surprises me that my hybrid, 170,000 miles, I did the first brake job on it. 170,000 miles, I can't believe it, because that's, but that's the way they work. I mean, the braking, it generates energy, and so you don't really wear your brakes out. But these are the kinds of things that you don't always realize about hybrids, is that they really last a long time. And there's been hybrids on the auction block that have 300,000 miles on them, and they're selling them, for a car auction, which is so kind of unbelievable. We'd have to ask ourselves, do we want a car that's going to last that long? But the other thing that you, in the material sent that I thought was really interesting is the whole idea of having charging stations. And, as we've talked tonight about, the type of people, how they look at how attractive our community is, and folks with electric cars, are the kind of folks we would probably want in our town. And if we had a station for charging, that would really be an attractive feature, and I think that's something we should move in the direction of, when that opportunity presents itself. So.
Have you looked at did you see the packet, the information on the Mass
I haven't
EV?
reviewed it all
Okay.
that carefully. I
Yeah,
know
'cause
there
they
are
ca-
incentives and things like that. I had
Incentives.
gone through all of that when we did the green communities, and there was limited applicability when we went through it at that time. And maybe something's changed.
Okay.
So, to your point, unfortunately, we store most of our vehicles outside, so they're not going to last that long. They'll rot before they wear out.
Right.
Until that changes, that is another consideration we had when discussing this, that especially with DPW vehicles, even administrative ones, if we're storing all of our vehicles outside, why make an investment in a more expensive hybrid? The other thing, I use it, the difference between a vehicle that I would use versus the water and sewer superintendent. I'd like to just split that a little bit to show you how we are following our existing policy to be greener. In the past, there was a request to make it an Explorer. And I said, no, you don't need an Explorer, you only need the Equinox or the Escape. They're smaller, they're more fuel efficient, and they're less expensive. And that's what he's driving today. And that does conform with our existing policies and our existing practices. So I just want to use that example of, we didn't buy a hybrid, we did get a smaller, less fuel consumptive vehicle to meet the need. But like the director's vehicle, he is out in snowstorms and in inclement weather and emergencies. That does need to be a heavier duty vehicle. And so it really is, and it gets really gradient. What is that specific vehicle used? When is it used? When does it absolutely 100% need to perform? In terms of emergency situations. So I think the feedback is good. They do have. We talked about the plug-in BMWs. Certainly we can. If you want to buy one of those, you put a charging station right under the sign that says parking reserved town manager. I'm cool with that.
You can get a grant for that, can't you?
Yeah.
Yeah,
You probably could.
They did.
The
They
town
were
manager
giving-
BMW
It's
grants?
rebates, not
Yeah.
grants. You have to
Yeah.
pay for it up front.
Yeah, but it was almost a total rebate on the thing.
But I think it's a tax, a municipality did make that work, but,
Yeah, but this is Long Meadow.
yeah. Yeah, I don't need to re-litigate the budget process, but this is Long Meadow, and we were trying to rub nickels together to close the budget gap. That's the problem. And you just spent the money on traffic signals,
Yep.
No, we
on fluted poles.
asked for
Yes.
consideration.
Okay, so moving on, if you could give us a update next time on the ADA policy and the town health insurance policy, any recommendations you have on changes on those?
The town health insurance policy is a long-term thing that we need to look at. It's going to take a lot of research and a lot of data crunching, so I'm going to take a little more time with that one. And that's a major change that's going to affect a lot of people's
Okay,
lives.
we're going to actually be talking about Scantic Valley, and the pension will be reviewed in October.
Mhm.
Do you think you'll have that done, or some recommendations in October?
Potentially.
Okay, so we'll pencil it in for October.
Okay.
And the ADA for next time, if you could show us that, make sure that we're all looking at the same one. And then I'll just go down to the third policy for next week. The next thing I had down was committee liaisons.
Oh, can I go back? I don't really
Yeah.
know what you're talking about when you say ADA policy. That's a pretty broad term.
We actually have the very
Do you mean the
first-
Commission on Disabilities thing we talked about beforehand?
No, we have our very first, I'm taking our select board policy book, and I'm going 1, 2, 3. The very first one is our ADA policy. And you might have another one, and we might need to just vote on it to go into our policy book.
Okay.
It might be in 2 different locations, but I'm just trying to review
If we
the
have an
whole
existing
book.
policy that's in place and hasn't really presented a need for change, do we need to go through and change it, or can we just say we have it, it works?
We could just vote it and say it's got to go in the select board policy book.
You
Because
can-
right now, we have something that's not, probably coordinates with the rest of the town.
No, but it is in the select board policy book now.
Okay,
No,
well,
not in the select board policy book, it's in the town policy book.
Right.
But I think, Stephen, it's okay to say, I've looked through it, it still applies. You want to, vote to re-up it, fine. If not, it's still valid.
yeah, we'll review it, because I'm not sure if it's exactly what you got elsewhere. We're just trying to clean up the policy book and make sure everything needs to be looked at.
Do you know what she's talking about? Okay, we'll talk about it tomorrow, because I still don't.
Okay. And then the committee liaison, one of the things I was thinking of was in regards to trying to get people to, and I know some people have signed up, is to get them to communicate with all of the boards and committees, to ask them, in other words, Bill, your liaison to, like, conservation. And so you would just be asking them for minutes of their meeting to go to you, and then you just report what's happening with them. And if there's any problems or concerns, they would just be talking to you. It doesn't mean to attend all the meetings. It just means to bring that information back to this board. So all of a sudden, we don't find a board's doing something that we had no idea about. So it's mainly communication.
And Maria, I'll volunteer to do the Historic Commission, Historic District
Oh, I was
Cultural
going to ask
Council.
you. Okay,
Yeah, so,
thank you.
I thought I might be asked, but I
Okay.
agreed to do that, yeah.
And one of the things I'm trying to get from all of them is how long people have been serving. So if someone had served 3 years on conservation and 2 years on historic, they get 5 years. And that way we can recognize people's years of service.
Okay.
And I'll get that information then to Debbie, and we'll just, every year, keep a running tally of that.
Okay.
All right, so then the next thing we had down was roles and responsibilities chart. I sent you what Mark had worked on, and what mine was mainly roles and responsibilities, and his was also to get us an idea of who had what, where they stood in the power structure. So just review that again in the mission statement if you've got any more input to send that to me, and when we get a lot of input, we'll then bring it back. And it's mainly, it's almost like an educational thing for us to work on, to understand what we're supposed to be doing and where we're going.
Yeah, Maria, there's a more formal document for roles and or more formal process for roles and responsibilities, and I've seen it used a couple times. I've used it where I work, and I think I've alluded to it here before. I'd like to talk to you about it. It does more of a listing of actions and activities, so that, in our case, the select board, the town manager, department heads understand who's accountable, who's responsible, who gets consulted,
Okay.
and who just gets informed.
Mhm.
And it really is a nice way of working through that, so when
Yeah,
it comes
bring
to
that to
street,
me
picking
and that-
streetlights, you know, we understand that, you know, somebody may just, after the decision's made, you get told what the decision is, and you don't get any input on it. So, you know, I think we need to look.
So if
at
there's if there's a exercise or process other than the chart that I'm trying to
Yes, there
create,
is.
then I'd be glad to listen to that. Mhm.
I felt like we just went through this
What do you mean?
with Bernie Lynch.
Yeah, I think we're expanding on it, and so that I want to find something that we create, that we put into a packet, so that the next select board knows.
I thought this was he created that. His PowerPoint kind of went through all the roles and responsibilities. I feel like this document's already been created.
I will be glad to look at that and combine that with what we're doing.
Okay.
And one of the things we don't have is the mission statement, and so if everyone would just sort of look through that and see what they might want to change. Okay. All right, let's see. What was the next thing on we had? Regional meeting. We talked a little bit about this last time, about October 6th, and wanted to get everyone's feeling, and they said, well, they might enjoy a meal. Do you think we should specifically follow through on that and ask for a meal, that we all sit down and spend the evening together, or do you think we should do the regular joint administrative meeting and then bring up forming a association that we meet at a regular basis? How does everyone feel about that?
You know, as you had mentioned too, and I had, I was invited once to the association that happens up in Hampshire County, and they, you know, they have a nice lunch, and they have speakers, and they do quite a nice thing, and so, yeah, having a meal, I think it does really, it gives people an opportunity to just talk about what's really going on in their towns, because, you know, there are big differences between what we deal with here and what's being dealt with in a town like Hamden, you know, and it would be interesting to get that perspective, and we could learn something from them, and I'm sure they could learn something from us, and so, you know, when it's all just presentations, people may not have the time to really talk, and I think that in the meeting we had in Wilbraham, we got there, we had a presentation and a break, and then a second presentation, and we didn't have that much interaction time, I don't
Okay.
think.
All right, anyone else have a feeling about that?
I think that's a good idea.
Okay.
Can I ask a question? Because I wasn't here for the discussion. There's the Select Boards Association that meets semi-regularly, which is really, in effect, a kind of regional opportunity for selectmen or select board members to kind of meet, and they have some light agendas. Then there's regional meetings that are like project specific, like a regional meeting with the 5-town, now 6-town regional dispatch group. And then there's other like more generic regional things that Pioneer Valley Planning Commission is doing. I'm trying to figure out.
We've never had a regional meeting where we sit down like Hampshire County does, and we have a group that meets on a regular basis. What we've been doing is the 6 towns have been getting together a couple of times a year to talk about specific issues.
In Hampshire County.
In Hampden County, which is Ludlow, Williams.
Right.
So, and I know that Nick Bro from Wilbraham recommended October 6th, and I'm thinking if we could try to institutionalize this and expand it so it's done on a regular basis, where we meet regionally and network and discuss things. So that's what the board, and I think I'm going to approach the other select boards in the area and see how they feel about getting together. So I just wanted to make sure, and I've started a list of topics that we could have, so if there's any topics you feel need to be on it, we have till October 6th to really get an agenda going. Please send me the agenda. The next thing is, let's see.
Adjournment?
No, we haven't even begun. We've got, it's not on here. Oh, yes, it's under new business. So moving on to new business block party approvals.
I move we approve the block party for Farmington Avenue for August 27th, 2016, with a rain date of August 28th.
Second.
Okay, any discussion? All those in favor? Okay. And then I wanted to move down.
Can I just move that we approve the block party for Ellington Street for September 10th with a rain date of September 17th.
Is there a second?
Second.
Discussion? All those in favor? Okay, I'm just going to move down to municipal roundtable, list of agenda items. How many of us are going to this? I'm going to be there. Tom, you said you
Wednesday,
might?
yes.
Wednesday?
Yep.
Richard, are you going to be there?
Yeah, I'm likely going to come up.
Bill?
Yep.
And so we're going to have a full board. Mark, you're going to be there, right?
Yes.
And so what I've done is I went ahead and posted, it was Mark's recommendation, which was a good one, so everyone can express their opinions freely, because we're going to have a posted meeting. I believe it's going to be in this room. Everyone try to think of what's really important for the town.
Is that going to be televised?
I would assume so.
Recorded?
The-
It'll also be recorded?
Hey, Brian, is that going to be televised on Thursday at 11:30? Is it 10:30?
10:30.
10:30 a.m.?
Do you guys want it to be?
Yeah.
Nice to be.
Sure.
Well,
me.
isn't it the
It's
senators?
not ours.
It's the senators' event.
It's a senators'
and,
event.
I'm
yeah.
sure there'll be television, I'm sure there'll be media availability.
Is it here?
It's here,
Yeah, it's going to be here.
Yeah.
Yes.
right in this very room.
Well, there'd be media attention, but I mean, we're talking about for the edification for the community and what's asked.
Yeah.
That's the-
If we're going to be in here,
And it's going to be a select board
I
meeting.
would-
We've posted it.
but I would defer to the senator's office on whether or not he wants it live streamed and televised.
Right.
Okay, so I will I'll send a note to his,
Yeah. And Senator
Assistant.
Rosenberg will be here.
I can do
and
that.
he'd probably
you'll
wanna-
contact
I'll
them?
take care of that.
Okay.
yeah.
And if he okays it, then check with LCTV. So I think we should try to really figure out what is really important for this select board to be, what's our ask? And so we can really emphasize and push that. Well, yeah, but also legislation. I mean, I think pension reform and OPEB reform is really up there, especially the pension. I think you're going to have a lot of ammunition on that, on where the problems lie in regards to the pension reform. And anything else you think we should be
But they
pushing?
have an agenda already.
Oh, no, it's supposed to be a listening tour, listening
is?
to what
Oh,
our
it's a listening
needs
tour.
are.
Oh, okay.
And I sat down and tried to sketch out some of the issues
I thought
that,
this was a presentation on the municipal modernization bill.
That's what I thought.
now I thought it was also a listening tour on what the needs are of the community.
No, isn't it?
I thought I had seen it advertised
right.
as a presentation on the municipal modernization bill.
Yeah.
Well, I just got a phone call, I didn't get a,
Well,
yeah.
whatever they said in the phone, we'll go with.
And I don't want to suggest that it's not going to be a listening session. I'm
Here's
sure.
here's what we've done for you.
Well,
To you.
I think.
We're gonna be doing less than nothing.
Well, no, I think it is, the municipal modernization bill, from everything I've seen, does address many of these issues. I haven't gotten into the specificity of how, but when you look at the summaries, it talks about OPEB and health insurance and a lot of these big things. Speed limits, setting speed limits on local roads. So it's, it's one of those things where there's a lot in it. I don't know what it means, but I thought that that's what this was going to be.
Well,
But I don't think, I think it is going to be interactive, but I thought the focus was on municipal modernization.
why don't we all try to review municipal modernization before Wednesday, and then,
Walt Sturzik sent out a phenomenal summary of that to us.
Yes.
It was a great
Yeah.
summary, but I tried reading the actual law. It's ridiculous, but the summary was a great summary that they put together.
and it would be nice if we sort of had sit down and figured out a couple of asks that we really want to emphasize as being important in town. And this is something that we will re-emphasize when we bring our legislators in front of us, which is, I think, in October. So I just handed out everyone a sheet for us to, just a thinking
That's some of the
sheet.
things that you're talking
I'm
about.
thinking of.
Okay.
But I don't know how the whole board's thinking and where
I
they're
think
going
it'll be
with
a
it.
surprise.
That's right. That's what everyone else is thinking.
Well, they didn't give us an end time, did they? Just a start time, so we just keep going.
I think they'll find an appropriate way to shut the meeting down when
Yes,
it's time
and
to go
leave.
home. Yeah.
Okay, so that moves us to our last agenda item, which is the town manager's evaluation and goal setting. And Stephen sent us the 360, then he sent us his self-evaluation, and then we sent back everyone handed in their comments by the 18th. I collated the whole thing and sent it out. And Stephen got a copy, and all of us got a copy. The next step in regards to town manager evaluation, I think rolls into a goal setting for the upcoming year. I know that in the self-evaluation, Stephen made a whole set of goals as possible things that he's going to be working towards this upcoming year. I know that we had our previous goal setting. I was thinking a next step might be for us to review those goals and see how we did as a board, and maybe self-evaluate us and how we did as a board, and maybe where we want to go with this upcoming year with the goals. This is what we had worked on with the facilitator before, and it went into a previous packet, and I'm just pulling them out again. And these are the policy-oriented goals and what goals we might want to consider putting together. So how does everyone feel about the next step in the evaluation? Is there anything else people think we should be doing or discussing?
Well, Maria, I think it's, at some point, I know that you collated the 5 individual comments. I think at some point the townspeople have we ought to somehow, and I don't know how, review that. And I like the way you did it, that you just collated them and didn't try to take averages or something. I think that was fine, but I think there ought to be some summary somehow that people understand what went on.
All right, well, we could do that in discussion. It was put late in the packet, but I'm going to ask Deb to put it in this packet. In other words, add it to the packet. It came in after you had left on Friday. I think that this year, definitely, if we looked at the points, it was all much higher. The average score was definitely above meet standards, and all of us had opinions on what we could do to improve the relationship between the town manager and the board, and also recommendations on how the town manager can improve. I thought it was very interesting to see the approach everyone had, which was all slightly different. But I think that we can definitely say that Stephen's evaluation came out to be very well on the positive side. And as a board, I think we saw tremendous progress that's occurred over the past few years, not just in his performance, but the work that you've done with the select board. And what I'm looking at is where we can go in the future with that. I was hoping tonight we would decide on goal setting, or maybe we want to hear Stephen come back with a set of goals, and for us to review where we're going to go this upcoming year, because I think it's important that we have solid goals so that as he works towards this year, he knows something that he's trying to mark himself against. Yeah.
Okay, I think it's appropriate to take a slight pause. Stephen just got the evaluation, he's just got back, he hasn't had time to absorb it yet. And I think he will come to the board with some goals and objectives based on that, on the evaluation, to where we've made suggestions where areas of improvement could be made, not necessarily needed to be made, but could be made. I think it's likely a broader discussion, but I want to have Stephen have enough time to absorb the evaluation and come back with where he feels. And he's going to come in. I'd like to see him make a presentation. I'd like to see him make a verbal presentation about what he felt about his performance year and what he felt about the board's evaluation of his performance this year.
I think I'm probably prepared to do that. Here, like now.
All right, now.
Rather than do a presentation.
Okay? There will be a presentation, no.
Maybe.
Okay, well, before he goes, I don't know if anyone else on the board, I know I'd like to just say something. I'd say that it's also something that we should spend time with as a board, to understand how each one of us feels about Stephen's performance this year, and areas that he would, his strengths and areas that things could work on. I know when he does goal setting, like you say, this could be a helpful tool to him. As I read through it, I didn't see anything that really surprised or shocked me. And I thought overall it was a pretty fair evaluation when you looked at the averages. So, good job. Good year.
Thank you, Tom.
Thanks for being here. I was concerned if it was too good, that you might become more desirable to another town. So luckily, we had some people who helped to keep it. You didn't have all exceeds expectations. I don't know if anyone else has any.
You want to follow after that, Stephen?
I didn't know if you guys were going to go around the horn or not.
Well, I haven't been here very long, but so far I think you're doing a heck of a job.
Thank you.
Well, we've talked about Stephen's performance a lot on camera. And I think every citizen out there has seen improvement take place in this board and in the performance of the town manager and the relationship that the town manager has both on camera and off camera with the select board. It's been improving every day. Sometimes there's minor setbacks, but that's just part of the business. I think we've got a board that understands the role and function better of the town manager now. I think the board may have, I'm going to say personally, has matured in their understanding of what the town manager does and what the select board does, their policy role. And they can control a lot, but they have to write policy to do it, so the onus falls back on them. There's Stephen has some unbelievably strong traits that he's demonstrated to cameras and to the general public. Everything's not going to be perfect because the world's not perfect. You can't make every individual who comes before you happy. But I think he has shown wonderful development now, and he's in his third year. So now we've seen what his potential really is. He's settled in. He's a town resident. He's much more of a team player because he has a vested interest now. He's made a conscious decision that Longmeadow is where he wants to be and where he wants to work and form his next career move from. And I think that's an important step that happened. And it doesn't happen the first year. It happens the second and third year. So what we're seeing now is the progression of this normal adjustment to a job and the board's normal adjustment to a new employee. So I think it's been doing good. I've enjoyed working with Stephen a great deal. We've had a lot of personal conversations, a lot of work-related conversations, and there's been times of stress, but that's just part of the game. Tomorrow's another day, and you pick up and you run forward. I think Stephen offers a wealth of knowledge and experience and dedication to our community. And I think sometimes we overlook it. I liked when he got his report and came back, and everybody could sit and read just what did this guy do the last year. And if you don't sit in shock and awe, because we meet every 2 weeks for about 3 to 4 hours, and we don't really know, unless you're involved as the chair, and Mark, you've been a chair, Marie, you've been a chair, I've been a chair, unless you're in the chair position, you are not aware of just how much goes on in this town. Only when you get in there, you become fully aware of what the hell's going on. Every day, it's a bombardment, there's meetings and everything. We don't spend a lot of time waving the flag for our success stories. We likely need to spend a little bit more time doing that. We still seem to want to dive down when we're displeased about something. And I think that's what the board could likely correct, is what we do as a board, how we demonstrate ourselves, how we demonstrate support for the town manager. I just like to say, I've enjoyed working with Stephen, especially as the chair for the last 2 years. I mean, we've had, I think, a very productive time, a good understanding, and I think it is going up. I say, if nothing else, continue doing what you're doing, with some of the minor things that we mentioned, some little personal things. So that's all I say.
I guess I feel compelled to say something also. I'm gonna read part of what I wrote here because I think it pretty much summarizes what I was thinking. I said that 2016 fiscal year was a year of continued growth and maturation of the works by and relationship between the town manager and the select board. It's my perception that we're now in the third phase, it's called the norming phase of group dynamics, and some have heard that of called forming, storming, norming, and performing. But we still have a way to go to move to a high-performing operation where the select board and the town manager are working together seamlessly on the same issues with complementary actions. And you know, I really believe that. I think we're doing a lot. In the write-up I have, and I'll let the write-up speak for itself, I tried to use specific examples, Stephen, so you could identify, you know, when I said something, what I was picking as example, and clearly I picked the examples that supported what I was saying at the time. But you know, I would, like Richard, I'd hope that you'd kind of look at some of those and reflect on them and say, yeah, maybe some of those we did really well, and some of those we couldn't do well. I thought it was interesting that the comments were generally on the budget. You tried like a son of a gun, and it was one of the most challenging years we've had for a budget, and yet overall the ratings were pretty good, I think, across the board. And so it's not necessarily always where we go, but a lot of it is how we got there. And I think that reflected as much the how as the what. And so for me, that was pretty important. I also just wanted to comment a little bit. The last comment I'll add is that I think that there's an element here that I just wanted to reflect, which we've talked over and over, on and off during the year, but best characterization I can make it is called bedside manner, and I think that bedside manner in how we deal with the public and how we deal with one another is often as important as what we actually say and what we do. And yeah, I want to get the best physician I can, but you know, if I'm going for a routine physical year after year and I got some really ornery doctor, I'm going to go find somebody else. But when I'm sick, I'll probably go back to that real ornery person if he's the best doctor in town. But I think that we need to be particularly pay attention to how we do things as well as what we do. But I agree with Richard in the comment of maturation. I think there's a comment of more involved, more invested. But I'd be remiss if I didn't go back to the one area that I'm still concerned about, and that's the area that is, you know, relationship with the select board and really preparation for the meeting. And I know we can't always get what we want every time we get it, but I'd ask that you pay particular attention to those areas. Those seem to be the ones that stick out the most in my mind.
I think it's been you look back at every single year that you've been here, it's been phenomenal what you've done. I'm in awe of your talent and what you really know. And, but it's mainly, as people describe him, as a pit bull. Okay, and I said, but he's our pit bull. So when he gets after a project, you are extremely dedicated. And I know that you're going to come out on top. And sometimes that gets a little rough, but I know at the end, you're fighting for Longmeadow. And sometimes I know that you always care, and you're extremely dedicated, and you're talented. Sometimes you care too much. You have to relax because you can't win every single one, but you want to win every single one. So I think that we're very fortunate to have you. I think that as a board, we need to mature also. And I think that the relationship is definitely growing and building. And I think the results is what really matters. And so I don't look at the whole budget process and how rough it was and how sometimes material wasn't there. I look as where we were at the end. And at the end, you really wrestled your departments and you got them down to where they needed to be to have a balanced budget. And that was not easy to do. So I always look at the results and not how we got there, But, and so far, I've been very pleased. But you hear, when I'm not happy, I let you know. And I know in the past, people criticized me that I gave you too many 5s. So I was balanced in my review of you. And I think that one of the things I said in my review, which is true, it's rare to find a strong leader who will admit when they're wrong or will change directions. And as we see in politics today, we just don't have those type of leaders anymore. They're going to take it right to the wall. You will pause when you receive criticism or people express concerns to you, and you will change direction when you feel it's appropriate. And that is something I've learned to respect and appreciate in you. And so I know we've thrown you a lot of bouquets, but you, in that, as I said, we all came up into the positive when you added all our scores together, though I felt number crunching wasn't that
5-point
important.
scale.
It was the details in it. And I know you will seriously read it and reread it and reread it and come out with what you feel you need to make changes to bring those up to all 5s
I
in the
appreciate that.
upcoming years.
I definitely appreciate the feedback. I'll just, if I can, I'll say a couple things about it. I did actually read a couple times already. Because there are things I agree with, things I don't agree with, and there are positive things that were said that I don't think are 100% there. That I'm like, well, I don't really feel like I did that well on that particular thing, but I appreciate the feedback. And there are negative things I feel like, I really believe I was better than that. But overall, I agree with the assessment that it is a fair evaluation. The comment I made at the select board meeting today, after I had reviewed it and I came in this morning, we talked about the department heads. The self-evaluation was really, and the department head 360 I get that feedback from them. And at the time, I said, my evaluation is really an assessment of a team of people, not one person. And I very much believe that. And so when I came in, I said to them this morning, the review was favorable and fair, and a lot of positive things were said, and that is a reflection of everybody here, not just me. I think the same can be said about the select board and town manager, the 6 of us here now, that it is really a reflection of a team effort at overall improvement. And I do think that the improvements noted here are a reflection of work that has been put in both individually and as a group to improve how each of us work in our roles individually, how we work in our roles as a group, and how we work together as a group. And so I'm pleased that as a group of people, we've allowed ourselves to recognize that things are better and moving in the right direction. So I very much appreciate the feedback. I think, and Mark wasn't the only one that mentioned, bedside manner, or, you say pit bull and attitude. I mean, I work very hard to try and be positive. I mean, Debbie hears a lot of phone conversations or interactions that many of them start very negative. Someone's calling me very angry. And one of the things that a skill that I've developed is the ability to kind of walk things back a little bit and have people laughing at the end of the conversation while still taking their criticism or their request or what have you seriously, make it so it's not personal and they're not angry about it, but we will follow up on what happens. Now, there are ones I'd like to have back, there's no doubt about it. But I think, and it's not just in the office, it's, at the grocery store, with a group of friends of, the parents of my kids' friends at, field day at center school, it's playing golf, it's work, you name it. I get the feedback randomly and frequently, and I never say, call me at the office. Don't talk to me about it now, call me in the office. If someone engages me at field day at center school, I talk to them about it because that's my job. I'm always a town manager. I'm not just 8 to 4. So I think I guess what I'd say, and I think I said this last year, I would put my batting average of positive conversations against negative conversations, negative interactions against anybody's. I'm proud of the fact that I have many conversations with people, many of them where I'm giving them answers or conveying information they don't want to hear, and most of them go very, very well. The ones I can't have back sometimes is just, it's not a two-way street. Sometimes I can only control what I can say, and I can't control how they feel about it. But if I am conveying to people that I'm not open to their feedback, or one of the things I do want to do is learn how to, or continue to develop on just saying, okay, fine. Getting away from, here's the reasons why that's not possible in the moment, and just say, we'll get back to you. Because some people don't want to know the real, if they don't want to hear the answer, they may just really not want to hear the answer, and you just have to let some time pass and figuring out when is some, because there's plenty of times I call and I say, you don't want to hear this answer, but here it is, and they say, I appreciate you not stringing me out and just giving me the straight information, thanks, and then there's other people who want to argue with it. So that is a key thing. I know of, I can think of specific examples where I didn't handle certain conversations well, so I will continue to work on that. I do think that the goals, I did put a few in here that were my personal goals. I did this obviously before I read your evaluation, but as I went through it, I would think that what kind of struck me is I think we're getting to know each other pretty well, because I think some of the things I have in here would address some of the issues that have been identified by the board. And service to the select board is one of the categories, and it is the category that has been the biggest weak spot for me. And I think that some of you articulated that, and I feel that's the case. I think, however, that if you look at the relationship that has been between the town manager and the select board for the past 3 years, a rational person could draw some lines between the tenor of the relationship and the perception of level of service. So I think that is not only the perception, but the perception of service, but also the level of service. And that's something that I think will improve by virtue of some of the changes that the board has had, as well as the work we did with Bernie Lynch and a new chair and kind of a new style and everything else. So I do think that's going to improve organically, but there are things within there that and Mark's example, Lieutenant Governor, is a perfect one that, that were just, blatant errors on my part, and those are the things those are the self-inflicted wounds that I really need to do a better job limiting, so that's one of the areas of focus I'm going to have. But I'm very grateful for the feedback, both the positive and the negative. I think I got, as you saw from the 360-degree review from the department heads, there are things that I'm very proud of. The biggest one is that I do get a lot of input from people, the people who know the most about certain subjects that I'm going to have to make a decision on. I get the feedback from those people. I take their consideration. Sometimes I agree with them, sometimes I don't, but I always, I feel like it proves that my focus on fostering a team environment where people feel comfortable disagreeing with me or offering me a different viewpoint, or expressing themselves in their monthly report directly to the board about policing in Long Meadow or something like that. That's something I'm proud of. I think those reviews reflected that. They also reflected some of my personality traits that I wasn't doing as good a job masking as I thought I was, and those are the things I have to work on as well. But again, I do think it's fair. I am grateful for the feedback, and I look forward to building on the things that have been successful and working on the things that haven't.
So did you want to hold off giving us that list that you said you were working on?
Well, it's-
You held up a piece of paper that said...
Didn't I send this out? This is
Oh, that's your self-evaluation.
Yeah, I put goals at the bottom of each thing.
Oh, okay. Oh, I thought you had created something else.
One of the things that we should do while we're on this topic is talk about the format of the review as we talk about goals, and make the decision to reformat the form or change the form, so next year at this time the evaluation criteria has been set well in advance. So, because what happens is we do the evaluation and then we kind of move on excuse me, to other things. So if we're gonna do specific goals and tie the evaluation to the goals, that's perfectly fine. That's one way to do it. That's the way a lot of towns do it. But the evaluation form needs to follow that as well.
Yes. So I think that's rolls back to what I was talking about on the next step. These policy-oriented goals, do we want to keep those? Do we want to change those? And do we want to tie this into what Stephen needs to work towards this year in regards to his next evaluation? Or does Stephen want to have a set of goals that he creates?
If you want
Yeah.
to if you want me to pull these goals out and put them on a separate sheet so they look like something more definable, we can start there.
Why don't you do that and have, all of us will review these goals and see if there's any changes they want to add to these or expand on these. Because like some of the things I noticed we didn't have on this goal, and again, this is just some of the notes I was thinking about, is do we want to add to this something like create a plan to decrease OPEB and pension unfunded liabilities? It can't be decrease it because this is a huge thing, but do we want this as one of the policy goals we're heading towards? Or create a plan to increase stabilization funds. So is there something that we want to have that is like a policy goal, but it's something that we're going to ask him to work on this year? And I know we always ask you to try to bring a balanced budget to town meeting, and we don't really have that as one of our goals. Do we want to do that? So I want us to sort of review our
It's a
goals.
state requirement, so it's not really, if I don't do that, I've got bigger problems.
Okay.
And actually, it's not, I bring the balance, I bring a budget to the select board must present.
Well, I'm talking about a negotiated one.
Yeah.
Because that's where a lot of your work comes in during the year. So why don't everyone think about these goals, look at them. If you want to bring your goals, and we'll have goals as the next agenda in their next select board meeting. And.
Marie,
Yeah.
how specific do you want to go? And I'm going to just harp back. Do we want to get down to, we're going to buy our streetlights or give up on it forever? I mean,
I feel that's more of a project than a policy goal.
okay.
Yeah. I think what we could do on something like that is, that would almost tie under one of our goals here. And what we could do is we could make suggestions under these policy goals, if you wanted to determine, let's see, do we have one that's decreasing costs? We have explore new revenue opportunity.
The other way to do that, though, Marie,
Yeah.
is, let me change this around there, maybe a little less, because the mark is basically jumping ahead to the place we're going to end up, that we've been kind of going around and around for several years. And before my arrival, this was a problem. That's a problem. A source of tension between the town manager and the select board. Look, we worked hard with our facilitator to create those goals. They are general. But within those sets of goals, there's a dozen things, small operational
Yes.
decisions and management decisions and things like that get made with an eye towards those things. And so the real thing is to have a discussion, and this is maybe where the presentation comes in, a discussion about what have I done to further advance those goals, and what do I plan to do to advance those broad policy goals in a very specific way, and what things, and if there's things that I've either done that you don't agree with, we can discuss that, or if there's things that I'm planning on doing or planning on recommending, really, depending on the situation, depending on the level of responsibility that the board doesn't agree with, that's another discussion. But that, I think, is the way to do it, and then you tie the evaluation to those goals and kind of go from there.
Okay, so what we're looking for is reviewing the policy-oriented goals, seeing if there's any new policies we want to put on there. And then you're going to make that presentation to us on the next step in
Well,
regards to the policy.
I'm making it as a proposal.
Mark?
So what I think, Stephen, you said, but maybe you didn't, but I'm going to read into this is, like strategy versus tactics, but goals versus results. And so we can sit here and talk about policy goals, but at some point we need results that work toward, that implement those goals. And if you're more comfortable saying, I'm going to take your general goals and give them to my staff as programs to implement, to do these, that's fine, but I think it'd be helpful for us to see what those are, although you've got some latitude in the year to change it and adjust it. But I think that for everybody to be flying at 30,000 feet, somebody's got to be down on the runway making sure the planes can land and take off to some degree. And that's where, the further down you get the food chain, the more people have to be pretty well grounded. Maybe the select board has the luxury, I guess, of being up at 35,000 feet for the policy goals. But if everybody's flying at 35,000 feet, nothing's getting
But that's
done.
not, I mean, I would
No, that's
suggest,
what I'm saying.
no, I hear what you're saying, and it's a good kind of general point, but in the context of the actual organization, that's not how it works. You know that there are people at the ground level and people at 2,000 feet and 3,000 feet and 10,000 feet.
Yeah.
Right, but I'm saying,
And lots of stuff happens. And like I said, I use the example of the Ford Escape versus the Ford Explorer. That's a specific decision that gets made in the furtherance of a goal. That's a 200-foot level decision. But that is an actual thing that happens in the furtherance of a goal, but it's like a pointillistic painting. It's just little dots of color when you get close to it, but when you pull back, it is a broader picture. And to be honest, I don't think it's ever going to work for you. Because everything we talked about it doesn't fit with
I think what he's describing is just another way of describing what we were just saying, which he's strategy and he wants to know your tactics going forward. So he wants you to color in the picture for us, which is what you were talking about doing with your goal set.
I mean, if we have number 2, explore new revenue opportunities, somebody's got to come back and say, here's the opportunities we're going to be exploring, and here's what we're going to be doing.
I do that
Yeah.
monthly.
Yeah.
And my point is, that ought to be communicated back to us as, here's the opportunities we're going to be working on this year. There's the monthly kind of ongoing things, and then there's some pretty big nuts to crack for new revenue opportunities, perhaps, that you're going to need policy changes or legal bylaw changes or the support of the select board to do. And so that's what I'm saying. Coming back to us with those is going to be helpful.
But we keep going back and forth, Mark, on concept versus reality. And you keep throwing out concept and without acknowledging the reality of it. We did present a bylaw change for demand fees as a way to generate.
We're just asking, we're talking about goal setting for this upcoming year.
I hear what he's saying loud and clear. And this is the same conversation that's been happening for 3 years. And so, and that's why I think the board as a group can come to some consensus on what the goal should be. But I know his position is going to be different because he's a different mindset on goals, and it's
Right.
born
My
out of
idea
your
of
work
new
experience and
revenue
everything else.
isn't demand fees. My idea of new revenue is something that brings in $75 or $150 or $300,000, not $15,000 in revenues. Now, I understand.
I hear you,
10
but-
ideas of $15,000 is a
Right.
good approach, but
So-
there ought to be some big ones out. And that's just one example. And for each of these, I'm saying there ought to be some things that you and your staff see as ways to implement these goals.
Okay, anyone, so we're giving you some recommendations. I'm coming back for our next goal discussion session, and I'd like everyone else to look at the policy-oriented goals, see if we need to make any expansion or changes on those, if you're still comfortable with those this upcoming year.
Marie, just as a last thing, and Stephen, as I think, one of the issues is magnitude on these, and maybe that's one of the differences, is, from my perspective, and I'm just going to pick these new revenue opportunities, to come back and say, I got 400 ideas that saved us a total of $8,000, but there were 400 ideas. Now, I'm not saying that, to me, that's not nearly what I have in mind. And yet, without better defining what the select board means by explore new revenue opportunities, one could very well argue 400 ideas to save us money is a great achievement on this. But without putting an order of magnitude on each of these, and I don't know how we do, I guess I'm leaning back on my engineering, quantifying these and not just qualifying these, putting numbers to them or just orders of magnitude, helps me set what I think we ought to do, and at least helps me communicate to the town manager what I had in mind when I started talking about these goals. And Stephen, I recognize that example was a little bit far-fetched, but, that's the kind of thing I was talking about.
And, the other thing we could do, let's give this a try and move to the next meeting if we find that we're running into a wall in regards to developing this year's, specific goals or personal goals of the town manager, whichever you want to describe it, we can always turn back to Bernie. I've talked to Bernie about whether if he's willing to come back in with another session with us to expand our goal-setting process. He said he'd be willing to do that. We could also set up something that Stephen and Bernie sits down, so that is an option in the future. But let's see how we do the next meeting, and after Stephen gives us the expansion on the list. The last part of this was contract timeline, and I was wondering maybe if mid-September, if the subcommittee could come back with some recommendations, and then we could try to start negotiations mid-September. Does that sound like a good timeline, Stephen?
I haven't done anything with it, so would it be okay if I just work directly with the subcommittee
Yeah, but.
to talk things through?
So I'm going to pencil in the second September 18th meeting or something.
Okay.
And so that gives you enough time to sit and talk and see what's going to work on that. And any other reports before we go into executive session? No? Subcommittee reports, nothing? Okay. Motion to...
I have one thing.
Oh, yes.
I forgot to mention under comments or announcements way up in the beginning. The field club has 2 tennis teams made up. I believe they're up to 14 and maybe 16 8-year-old. I'm not sure what it is. One of their teams has progressed and has moved to the next step in the USTA competition this year. They'll be going to sectionals at Mount Holyoke College this Wednesday and Thursday. They played Saturday and Sunday out in those temperatures that nobody wanted to be in. And they also played Sunday at Blinn, which a lot of people were wondering what all the activity was. That was the finals for that competition was at our tennis courts here in town.
Well, congratulations to the team. That's
Yeah,
fabulous.
they moved forward, so they're doing well. They've got a long way to go to nationals, but at least they're moving forward.
Yeah, that's exciting. Thank you. Is there a motion to adjourn to executive session?
Not to read.
Not to reopen?
We adjourn to executive session for the purpose of union negotiations, not to reopen into open session, not to reconvene into open session.
Second?
Second.
All right, and I guess a roll call.
Mark,
Yes.
Bill,
Yes.
Maureen,
Yes.
Donald.
Yes.
Yes.
All right, thank you very much for joining us this evening. We will see you, I believe it's September 6th. Is our next
Tuesday
meeting?
night.
Tuesday night, after Labor Day. So have a good rest of the summer. Thank you.
I could go home.